Right. We are back. Mostly technical family with another special guest because Aaron is out. He couldn't make it. He's traveling. He's all this stuff. So we're here with our good friend of the show, honorary member of the mostly technical host crew, I would say at this point.
All right.
Caleb Porzio.
All right.
How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Ian. Welcome to Mostly Technical.
Yeah. So, man, we got a lot to cover. Before we get into anything real, how are you liking? I know on your podcast, you recently talked about a new mic boom arm, and I ordered the one you got. But how are you liking it? Are you liking it?
It's so nice.
Okay.
The only thing I put my headphones on my arm, like when I'm done. Do you do that?
No. Well, I just use little AirPods. So
yeah. Okay. So that it's hard like to get the tension just right so that it's perfect for where like the Rode arm that I had, you could put anything on it. Like it wasn't held in balance, you know?
Right.
Where this one is very much like there's a tensioner and it's all kind of held in balance and you got to get that right. But anyway, super smooth. Cord goes right in the channel. Here, let's see here.
See, I like that though. I had the Rode one I think you had, and it doesn't have that.
Thing's junk, dude.
Yeah,
it's junk.
I've done like 200 podcast episodes on it, but I think it's no good.
Same. Yeah. It's no good. This is great. The Elgato Pro LP.
It's the Pro one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Pro one's important. Adam had the other one that's not Pro and said it felt cheap. This does not feel cheap to me at all. It's like rock solid, super smooth. Nobody hears the creaking anymore.
And it's low profile, right? I kind of wanted a low profile.
Yeah, it's low profile. Instead of it being like this, it's like that. Yeah, which is great. It kind of like swings out, you know?
That's what I want. I just want it to swing out of the way.
Yeah, I was worried because I have like all this stuff on my desk. I have my laptop, you know, it's like, where does the arm go? But it's just the same as the overarm. It kind of comes around. It's all good. It's great.
It's all good.
We love the mic. Ian, we need to talk more purchases. Okay. Can we talk more purchases? Yes. I just made a bunch of purchases.
Yes.
Yeah, we got to talk purchases. AirPods. So do you have like, what's in your ear right now? Is this the Pros with the little silicone piece?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I didn't used to like until they finally made the extra small ear cup thing, and so now it fits in my ear. My ear canals are like mini ear canals, and so it never would be very uncomfortable. But now, like 2 or 3 years ago, they got the small ones. So yes, now I have like 4 pairs of these. They're just in different places.
Gotcha. Are you using those for the primary mic right now?
No.
Okay.
I hope not.
That's impossible. I just don't see a microphone. Bad. Where's your microphone?
Oh yeah. I've been adjusting my mic location, because with this Shure mic, you don't really need it like right on top of your mouth. So I and I was sounding a little too bassy, so I didn't like that. So I read up on it, and it's like I give it a little space. So now it's a little more space.
Yeah, you see on those podcasts like Theo Von or something, they have like the mics are far away.
Yeah,
like this exact mic, and I was like, I didn't know that I could even do that.
Yeah, because I think it is like that's highly directional, and so like as long as you're in front of it, it's okay.
Right,
but you want to give it a little space. But yeah, if you're off to the side, it's no good.
I like that boom though, you know.
You like to get it. Oh, sometimes it is nice to have that.
Boom.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I felt like it was too much. It was going too much for me, so I'm trying to play with that. So yes, but no, I'm not using these. That would be
that would be
wild.
Tragic. So I have Pros, but they're ruined for some reason. One of them's just busted. So I got the AirPods for noise canceling, like with noise canceling, because you need the noise canceling. And I thought, it's like, I don't love the silicone in my ear. Like if I'm doing like a long bike ride or running, it gets like sweaty and gross. I've bought like, things to go on them to put them on your, I don't know. There's that. And
so you got the regular ones with the noise canceling, because that's a new thing. Okay, gotcha.
Because I liked the old AirPods. Like I liked that fit. It felt like good, and it didn't feel like it was inside my ear.
Yes.
And I'm a man of earwax. I don't know if others have earwax, but like if somebody's like, "Can I put in your headphones?" I'm like, "You don't want to put it in my head." I've like got to self-consciously look and like dig out some little, potato. But anyway, the invasive ones are worse.
Yes.
So I thought, anyway, I do not like these at all, Sam. I am.
Okay.
It's a different thing. The new AirPods are like angled.
They change the shape.
And it just doesn't fit nearly as well. So I think I'm going to return them and get the Pros. So.
Well, I was wondering about that because I did like the feel and shape of the old type, but then it's like, since they're adding this noise canceling, I'm like, well,
it's way worse.
Probably messing with the shape a little bit to make it noise cancelable, so it's a little tighter in there or whatever. But
yeah,
then
it feels
seems like it might
it
not
just
be right.
is always ready to fall out in a way that the old ones didn't. So anyway,
okay,
no go.
So they're done. All right.
Purchase number 2, Ian Landsman, Magic
The hell is
Mouse, Magic Mouse trackpad. You know, just the Mac like thing you use. Do you use a trackpad?
I'm not an animal. I'm not going to use the ridiculous mouse. I got to use the trackpad.
Crazy. So I mean, I use a actually, this is pretty much the exact mouse, just not the one that I use. I use this guy.
Okay.
But you use a trackpad.
Yeah. You never had a trackpad?
Never.
Trackpad's the only way to go, man.
This is crazy.
Trackpad's great.
You find it accurate enough?
I mean, yeah, man, I'm not shooting missiles over here. Like if I was playing video game, it wouldn't be accurate enough, but I never play a video game on my Mac. So for daily use, it's fine. And very interesting thing is I've never had a problem. Like I used to get bad like wrist stuff going on.
Yeah, that's why I have this wacky vertical situation.
The crazy one. Yeah. So I've never had that issue with the trackpad. And I used to move back and forth. I became ambidextrous with the mouse to alleviate the wrist stuff at one point.
Yep.
But with this, I don't even need to do that. Like I just leave it on my right hand, and I've never had an issue. So I don't know why that is, but yeah,
I like that.
Great.
I want to like it.
Okay.
But so far, it doesn't feel like the actual MacBook trackpad. Like the one on the MacBook feels just so premium,
right,
and so sensitive and beautiful. But this just feels a little bit, I don't know, not as responsive, not as accurate.
Really?
Yeah,
I've never seen that. It feels very responsive to me. It's instant. It's very. That's why I like it. It's like the MacBook. It's the same. Now this is new. You have a new one. Maybe there's something different because it's USB-C, right? It's like if you just got it, it's the new type.
Yeah, I think I need to try the trackpad with the new MacBook because it's currently only been tried with the old MacBook, which is a piece of junk. Right. Whatever. So we got the new MacBook, Ian.
Okay.
We got the 14-inch.
Sexy.
Okay.
We went the 14-inch. Man.
We got the 14-inch. We went 14.
Okay.
I've had 16 for the last 6 years. Okay. And
trying
we're back to 14. Yeah, it's so much lighter. The 16 is just ridiculously heavy.
It is much lighter. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, smaller. If you're if you're going places with it, it's the 14's obviously so much nicer to just throw in a bag and yeah, that stuff's very nice. So wait, so you haven't tried the trackpad with the new computer yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
But the new computer set up?
No.
Is it your? Oh, okay. Okay. So
too much work to do, Ian. I was so excited for the new Mac. I'm like, it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna change my life.
Right.
My fan is on currently, screaming. The old fan. It's like it's gonna be so great. But I got it, and it was just like the last thing in the world I want to do is blow 3 hours like fiddling with this thing when I got to get multi-selects going. You know.
Oh, you have to do that. But what are you on here? Are you on an Intel Mac still? Not an Intel Mac.
Yeah, I know.
Holy cow. How have you done all this work on Intel Mac? I can't believe it.
It's really brutal. I almost impulse bought a new MacBook for Laracon because I was going to be on stage and I didn't want people to see how slow my MacBook is.
And you had trouble. That's because
that wasn't on me. All right.
Okay.
It wasn't the Intel fault. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still on Intel and it sucks.
Wow.
But we got the M4. So you
got to rebuild. Yeah. I mean, that's too big a jump. You can't use that importer. Don't import. You got to start.
Never do. For my every like 5 years, I get a new MacBook. That's
crazy, man.
How often do you get a new MacBook?
So I always had a rule up until very, very recently. I had just a straight rule that I always got the newest one every year. Well, for a while there, right? They weren't doing one every year. So it was like you couldn't get it every year because they didn't come out every year.
Right.
And then they finally fixed that where they started doing them every year. But anyway, every time there was a new one, I just bought it. I was like, this is the one tool I use. Other people have dump trucks and things they have to depreciate and whatever. This is like the one thing to do my job. I'm just going to always have the best one.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, that's great.
And I just get the max RAM. The only thing I don't get max is like the disc usually necessarily. Although now I even get pretty big disc, but not usually the biggest one because it's so.
I went with the 1 terabyte.
It's abusive.
It's just like, what do I need more than that for?
I do a lot of photo stuff, so I do sometimes. I think I'm up to like either getting the 2 or the 4, but
dude, you're gonna give me buyer's remorse.
Yeah, I just got the max. How much RAM did you get?
64.
Okay, wait, that's not the max.
It's not.
Oh, isn't there?
Whatever. I figure what could I possibly use more than 64 gigs of unified memory?
The max. Anyway, so this time I
will say,
the
max? Is it like 128?
Mine is 128. Yeah, but
that's nutty.
I did drop off of the so it's not then the M series is so fast that
Yeah.
it's like I had an M1, I skipped the M2, then I got an M3, and now I'm probably just skipping the M4 because it's
Yeah.
like even though it's fast, I'm like I can't use the more speed, and I have 120 gigs of RAM already, and like whatever, it's fine. So I'm gonna skip this one. And I kind of bought the last one. And I did totally super duck it out with the absolute max RAM. I could have done 64 probably, whatever. I'm spending $5,000 on this thing, and it's just gonna have everything, the best of everything, and that's
you have
it.
good
It's gonna go
instincts,
2
Ian.
cycles.
Some of my instincts are self-sabotaging at the checkout line, where you're already at like $5,000. You're already there, and another $100, whatever. But I'm just
What's
like,
the difference? Yeah. And it's the one thing you buy. You don't buy anything else for your job. Like this is literally it. Like you have a couple software things you buy and whatever. This is your tools.
No,
This
I
is
feel
your
you. I mean, I
hammer,
feel the same way.
Yeah.
Well, I feel that way, but I also, I'm thinking back, and I'm pretty sure this is fact. This is my 3rd MacBook Pro in my life.
That's crazy.
Which is my 4th MacBook. The first one was an Air. Yeah, I did like Air, and then the small Pro, and then the 16-inch Intel, and now this M4, which is like, I've always just let them go so long that I hate them so much, and I'm way behind everybody else, and I don't know why. So
it is awesome though, because now you're gonna, when you get into this one, it's gonna be amazing, right? It's just gonna be so everything instantaneous, and you're gonna be so blown away with the speed and the quality of the display, and like everything's gonna be amazing, which is an awesome feeling. Versus when you spend $5,000 and it's like, oh, I don't really notice the difference. It seems a little faster, but
right. Some of what makes it feel worse to me, or like is not unmotivating to me, is that I use it in clamshell. Like I'm never opening my MacBook unless I'm traveling. Almost never. So it's like, that's a big part of like, oh, the keyboard is way better than my keyboard.
Yeah, for sure. They made a lot of enhancements to the keyboard. Yeah. Well, they went through all that where the keyboards were trash and breaking and all that stuff.
So and I got the MacBook after that.
Oh,
so I was like, this is good. I don't have that. But
so they improved it a lot. Yeah, I think they just did a bunch of work to make the keyboard just super awesome after that, since they got so much negative press. No, I think the keyboard's great. Like
this is like the best keyboard I've ever touched in my life.
Yeah, it's a really good keyboard. And I never had any trouble. There used to always be like stuff would get in there and keys would stop working. Like I've never, like in the last like whatever couple of these I've had, like, literally no problems with the keyboard. It's just perfect. So
yeah,
that's good.
It's like, I think it's even smaller than the 16-inch keyboard. Is that possible that they just shrunk it a little bit? It seems like a violation of something.
No, it's one of those things where it's like the optical illusion of it. It's like, well, it can't be the same keyboard, but it is actually.
It feels smaller than my other
Although maybe
keyboard.
from yours, it is. Yeah. Maybe it's trimmed a little bit, potentially. Yeah.
Anyway, fewer typing mistakes than any other keyboard with like the first use. It's bizarre.
Right. What did you? What are you doing for a screen?
I got the Mac Studio display.
Okay.
You have that?
Oh, no.
You got the XDR?
Yeah, you gotta get an XDR, man. This is your other one tool. So you have to have it.
Right.
Like,
for the longest time, I was on
the space.
Some Dell thing, and I was pressing Hugo the other day because he doesn't have. I don't think he has a Mac Studio, and the only Retina display he has is on his laptop. And I'm pairing with him in Tuple, and it just looks like bad.
Right.
And then he goes like, "Hold on a second, Rant." I mean, we've paired many, many hours.
Right.
And this is the first time he just switched something, and it's all perfect. And I was like, "What, dude?
What's going on?
You're capable of this?" He's like, "Oh, it's my laptop monitor." I was like, "We need to buy you a studio display, like
Let's
right
make
now."
This happen. Right.
And he's like refusing to. And part of his reasoning is he knows he needs to do this. Part of his reasoning is like he's designing for more people on non-Retina displays. So just like I know. I'm like, dude, come on. Come on.
I don't like the sound of that. Yeah.
I do remember thinking that though, when Adam got the XDR, then it was like so massive. Yeah. I was like, dude, all your sites on and it's not just his sites. It was just the trend of all this full width stuff. I don't know. On my display, everything looked like big and wide and too much. But on his display, it's all like micro, and you have to like, I don't know.
I do think that if I was buying it today, the studio, well, I don't know if that's exactly true, but I think the studio for most people is the way to go. That wasn't even because XDR came out first, and I was like, I just want the Apple thing. And the space is so good. Like, it's so amazing to have the extra space.
How big is your display?
It's 32, I think, the XDR,
Oh,
34, 32, something like that.
dude.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger. It's like 40-50% bigger or something. And I zoom it up a little bit because I have the old eyes. So like I don't use it like Adam. I think definitely Taylor is just like he just uses every pixel and it's like everything's microscopically small. So mine is not microscopically small, but this way I can have the text be a little bigger, things be a little bigger, and I still have room for like things next to each other and all that stuff, which is what I like.
Don't make me get the XDR.
Oh, it's so good. You should definitely do it.
So I got this within the last year.
Right.
A Livewire partner just saw the monitor I was on. It was like a Dell 23-inch monitor that I got used for like $300 forever ago. And he's like, I'm buying. He sent me a check. He's like, go to the Apple store today.
Oh, that's awesome.
Buy it. And I did, and it was awesome. It's the coolest thing. Thank you if you're listening. And I love it, and it's way bigger, and it's amazing, but I am finding I need more space. I was always like a tiny monitor guy on principle and whatever. But yeah, like the sound of an extra, like whatever, 4 inches.
40%.
Or more. How much did you say, 32?
Yeah, but it's like 40% more screen, you know, because like the diagonal and all the stuff. Like, yeah, it's a lot more screen. It's way bigger. Because I have a 27-inch Dell, like the Retina Dell 27-inch, whatever. It's like basically the same screen in like a iMac, but Dell makes it. And that's what I have at home.
Yeah.
And it's fine, you know, but like I'm like, it's so tiny. This thing is ridiculous. Even though like obviously, yes, like when I started, 14-inch was the big screen size, whatever. And you're like, you know, now it's like, oh, this 27, it should be fine, but it's not fine. It's like, oh, I'm used to having all this extra space. This is like, I'm so constrained here with this little screen. But
when you stream or anything, like, do you have to set like the resolution back to some absurd, you know?
I don't change anything.
You don't change anything.
I mean, I don't stream a lot. I don't stream code ever. So maybe if I was doing that, it would be an issue. But like I said, I zoom mine up a little bit, so everything's not microscopic anyway. So I think that's also, it's not on the like, it's like in the middle setting or something, not all the way to using every pixel
jitterbug setting
native. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's probably helpful. But the thing that's nice about the monitors is that the monitors last forever. So like on the one side, it's like ridiculous how much they charge for the monitors, but on the other side, it's like that you don't need to change often at all. It's like you get the monitor and it just lasts forever. So especially now that they're Retina, like whatever. I mean, what are they going to do? That's going to literally can't see the pixels. So how much better could it possibly be? Whatever they come out with in the future, right? So it's going to be fine to keep it. So
is it OLED?
No, I don't think so. I think it's like something. It's not OLED, I don't think, but it's some kind of like partially back. It's got more backlighting zones than a regular LCD, which is just like the lights on the sides or whatever. But it's not all the way to like the mic. It's like a mini LED, not a micro LED or something. I don't know. There's some distinctions, but
that would be like good. They got to do an OLED like magical giant display at some point, right?
Yeah, that would be nice, I guess. Now you are tempting me if they actually do that.
Yeah, don't they
just get those deep blacks?
What do they have that's OLED right now? Don't they have something? Is it
the watch? Like, I think it's just the watch.
Just the watch?
Unless the MacBooks are now? I don't think so, though. I think it's just the watch.
No. Let's hope that car alarm gets figured out in a minute. Oh,
I don't hear it. I don't hear it. So it's good. It's being filtered by Riverside, I guess.
Love it. Yeah. Okay. So
any other purchases?
Well, yeah, a new keyboard.
Okay.
So this guy, it's the Voyager. You got two of these. They're very small.
Oh, that's thin and small. For that kind of thing, I feel like they're usually big and chunky keys.
Yeah,
it's a little thinner.
Like my normal keyboard forever was the big
bad. Yeah.
You know, Ergodox easy, but anyway. So this is awesome. It's made out of like metal, so it's actually like hefty.
Ooh, I like that.
Whatever. Anyway. That's a purchase, and we got a Steam Deck. I'm going to return half these things, by the way, but you don't game, right?
No. Well, I mean, I play PlayStation once in a while, but I'm not like seriously into it now.
Me neither. That's why I'm going to return it. But people love the Valve Steam Deck. Got it. It's cool. I'm going to return it.
Yeah, I don't know if I can get into that.
Nah. So I think that's what we got.
All right,
that's what we got.
Little pre-Christmas, pre-holiday.
Yep. Yeah, you know, just upgrade some stuff. The new display, there's an upgrade in the MacBook called like nano texture. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I'm aware of this.
Yeah. I opted out of it. And it's giving me like slight buyer's remorse. I still have time to return the MacBook. I probably won't. Have you heard anything about this? Like, do people like it?
People do love it. People do love it. I've always been a little scared a bit because like the one on the XDR I didn't get because it was like they're like you got to be ultra careful, you can't touch it, all that stuff, and I was like whatever. I'm spitting as I podcast, and I
Yeah, a
just want to
lot
be
of
able to like
spit.
wipe this thing off. I don't want to be like worried about the nano texture.
Yeah.
But this one's I think the MacBooks are a different process, and I think they're a little more hardy. So I don't know. People do like it. I haven't seen it even in person, so I don't know. That's a tough call to go if you're not really sure about it,
I
because
know.
you know what you're getting otherwise, and that's pretty good anti-glare as it is. So
Yep.
are you going to be really sure that you want to go all the way with that,
Right.
I think.
I don't know if it was called, if it's the same thing, but the studio had the same option to
I
get
think it does.
some anti-glare thing, and I
Yeah.
opted out of it, and I'm glad I did, because it's like so sharp, it's just it would make it feel
that's the other
slightly
thing.
hazy.
That's what they said it does, and I wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
And I think if they use the same nanotexture in the MacBook, people assume as what they've used on the iPad, which now has nanotexture option.
Oh.
And so presumably that's hardier because like you're touching it with your fingers all the time on the iPad. So
yeah,
I think there are some differences there, but yeah,
I think I should have done it
no,
because this is what I think is the right thing.
You
don't
option.
get it in an indoor monitor. But an outdoor portable device, you get the nanotexture, because most of the time, and if I'm like designing something or I need to like see it beautifully, that's on my display in my office. But it would be nicer, I think, traveling to have nanotexture.
Especially it sounds like you never really use the laptop. Like you always use it in the office. Like you don't care. It doesn't sound like you do a lot of carrying it around your house.
No,
too much.
Almost never. Do you?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah,
nice.
I do.
Yeah, that's good. It's just a neck thing. I would love to like work from a couch, but that's like ruined me historically. So
yeah, that can be hard. And I think it's partially because like I often am at the office, but not always. So then if I'm not at the office,
right.
I'm just kind of wandering around the house in different places. But yeah. So for you, maybe if you return it, you can go get more RAM. How great would that be? You get the 128.
True. I already airdropped like 100-something gigabytes of like just GitHub repositories, and it's been extracting all morning. It's literally
just go.
So that's a one and done thing. That's I'm locked in. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'll be fine. You're gonna be very excited when you get that set up.
It's gonna be great. Yep.
All right. So I don't think have I bought anything? I haven't bought anything. I haven't bought anything in a while.
Gotta buy more stuff, Ian.
I bought lots of stuff. I've actually been on the opposite of that. I've been on the saving money, sort of budgeting, conserving mindset a little bit here lately. So, which is weird for me because I'm more of a, I see it, I buy it. I'm interested in it. I just buy it and then I figure out if I want it and then go from there.
Tell me about this.
I don't know how many good advice around that, but in terms of, I don't know, budgeting wise, so this is this will bring us into Flux. We'll talk about this on the show. I wasn't going to talk about this yet, but you're here.
I'm here.
Talk about it. Yep. So I had some side project ideas, blah, blah, blah. Some of them were too big. I talked about that last week, whatever. So what I've actually started building is a little budgeting app. Budgeting app. Because I don't like the way the other budgeting app works. I'm using the You Need a Budget. They're just, all of them though, they want you to become accountants. And I don't want to be an accountant. Like I don't want to reconcile anything.
Yeah,
I don't want
to.
I don't want to like be, I don't want to do anything to the penny. Like I want more of a bigger picture. I want the resistance of having to log what I'm purchasing be like that's what's really going on here, right? Like give me a reason to think about what I'm purchasing more before I purchase it. Where is it going category wise? I want to know that. But if I miss a couple $20 transactions that automatically happen in my credit card, like I don't care. I don't want to be in there at the end of the month being like, here's 200 transactions. Like try to remember what I spent $20 on at the coffee shop. Or you know what I mean? Like I don't want to do all that stuff. I just want to do what I want to do and what I want to enter and what I want to track without the overhead of this weight of like reconciliation and all that stuff. So that's what I've been messing around on. That's what I've been using Flux for. I don't know if I'm ever even going to release it. Maybe it's just going to be for me. Who knows? But this is what I'm hacking on night and weekend type thing right now. And I literally have like 3 hours into this thing. But that's what I've been messing around with Flux on. So yeah. So what's your what do you do with the budgeting? What's your
I mean, I've been through them all. YNAB. I mean, a while ago, whatever was available, like 8 years ago. Which was like YNAB was kind of newer. I really liked it. Wealthfront, I think, was another one.
Wealthfront, I don't think has budgeting, but yeah.
No.
No.
Then YNAB and
There's
Mint,
like Good
obviously.
Budget. There's like Mint,
Yeah,
and then
Mint
there's
was
like
the
Quicken and all them. They
big
all
free
do that
one.
stuff.
Yeah, so I used Mint for a while, but like the core problems with it are, so I attempted my own budgeting app at one point as well. Now I'm just a spreadsheet guy. Yeah. And because, well, whatever. All right. So the things that I hate about these apps I think are the things you hate about them. One, this is a problem that seems so. Oh, another one I've used is called. It imported all your transactions automatically, like it used Plaid and shoved them into spreadsheets for you automatically. It's called Tiller. And I used that for a while. I was like, this will allow me to like still have some of the benefits of the automated stuff. But anyway, the biggest like glaring problem to me is when you hook it all up with Plaid or whatever to be automated and you pay off a credit card, it shows up as an expense out of one account, out of your bank account, your checking account, and then income or whatever, the opposite of an expense in your credit card account. And then when you get your reports, they're all skewed. Like the net is fine. But if you look at expenses, they're way up because you spent all that money. And then, okay, so maybe again, the net, it doesn't matter with the net. It matters with like per account granularity and reporting because it just blows it all up. Like there should be something that negates these and removes them from all your reporting. Have you experienced this?
This is where you need to become an accountant, right? Like if you don't have the entries correct to balance internally, then you will have weird reports like that with like
yes, if you don't have like your checking account linked.
Yes, if things are not correctly connecting, you're not doing a balancing entry there, whatever. Like you have to become literally an accountant to like actually do your budgeting, and it's insane. It makes no sense.
That's annoying. Also, automatic categorization, they all do it, and it's fine, but it's not amazing, and it never like learned well enough, and you're babysitting it. And basically, totally like I think that the only value of budgeting in general is the like what's measured is improved thing. It's like I need to be measuring this so that it passes by my brain, and like big expenses like sort of punch me in the face on the way through. Like I need to get punched in the face by all these stupid decisions so that it impacts my behavior. It's like a behavioral thing. And all these apps, the more they automate, the less punches in the face you get. So it's like really what we need. What I tried to build was like a single you like open up a page and it's just like transaction, and you just hit like next, and you hit next, and you hit next, and you hit next, so that you just see it all.
So mine's a little along this line. It's the punch in the face for sure. The idea of like, I think that I have some ideas around like resistance when you even enter something. It's like I'm about to enter something. Like maybe I have to long press the button to do it, or some even more radical ideas, like something that like makes you think before you enter a transaction. And it's like, even if you're going to do it, even if you're doing it in the past, it's like Pavlovian type of thing. Like this is this little bit of extra something that your brain's gonna have to deal with on this like optional purchase you made, right? And it's just like training you to think through these things before you do them. And categorizing everything. The auto categorization totally useless in the modern world. Like, okay, here's 20 Amazon transactions. Like, what are you going to auto categorize them, right? So now, if you aren't doing it as you go, you have to remember. What did I buy 3 weeks ago from Amazon for $42.74? I don't know.
True. Like okay. So it has to, like to solve that problem, the Amazon problem, it has to be as you go.
Yeah, Amazon has no API for that either, which is sort of interesting. So so it pretty much has to be as you go. I mean, you could obviously go back and enter or whatever, but like the point being that like the automation is just bad because too many transactions are either need to be split, right? Like an Amazon thing and has 3 different items for 3 different things. Even if you're not being super granular, which I don't want to be, like you might just have food and light bulbs or something, whatever, a tool, and you want, or a work thing or whatever, and you want to like separate these, and it's not going to know that unless you go back and look and blah blah blah.
Okay.
So heavy focus
briefly
on
when you make an Apple like briefly on the Amazon thing, when you make an Apple purchase, I love that their credit card descriptor is like apple.com/bill or something. So it's literally a URL. Okay. You click on it, it takes you to a page, you log in, and it takes you to a page of all your transactions, and you can just so easily cross-reference like the date.
Going on.
That thing is because I have this dumb subscription. Or like Amazon, it's like AMZN Marketplace at some number
That's so
pile.
bad. Yeah.
And there's just like 100 of them and you're sitting there through past orders. And
Yep.
anyway, okay. So describe to me the experience of using, is this on your phone? Like if you're doing it as you go, it's on your phone, right?
Yeah. Well, right now it's you need a budget. Like this thing I'm building doesn't exist yet. It's just like the
Yeah, I know.
structure
We're
of
in
it exists. Yeah.
the Mind Palace.
Yes, it's in so this is this is an interesting thing. Because like this is part of why I didn't even want to build it. Because like it obviously has to be on your phone, right? And like I don't want to build a phone thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to build a phone app. I don't want to do any of that stuff, right? And so if this thing ever comes to be, phase 1 will be more of a like the progressive web app. You can save it to your thing, right? That's all it's going to be. You either deal with that or you don't. Obviously, as a business, that's not a good idea if I ever want to actually make money on this, because I think 95% of people at this point are looking in the app stores for like budgeting apps, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where they're searching. And so you would want to be in there. But obviously there's ways around that. You can do like it's a wrapper around the PWA thing or whatever. There's different strategies there to get it in the app store and have in-app purchase and all those things. But yeah, so it would just be the progressive web app thing. It has to be on your phone. I think you need like a dedicated, I mean, that's one of the things I strongly dislike about you need a budget is like you go into the app, there's all this shit there. And it's like the transaction button is just the same size as like the reporting button, which is like I'm in this app on my phone because I'm doing a transaction like 98% of the time, not like reviewing my reports, but the reports, the account button, the whole thing, it's all the same. So there's a lot of like weird UI stuff there, but
yeah, you want it to be like maybe there's like a dashboard or something in desktop mode, but when you have like Steam Deck has this, a lot of like game consoles have this where you can use your, like I think the Switch has this where you can use your phone as like a sidecar situation, like Apple TV maybe also,
I think
and it's like it's just for the things that are like really good for holding in your hand on a phone, which in this case would be like transaction entering, categorization, like really pleasant, front and center.
100%. Like that part has to be like big, obvious, touchable things that you just quickly do. And even if the rest of it's there, like the rest of it has to be secondary when you're in the mobile view to entering a transaction, with like looking at categories second and like everything else distant third, I would think. And then there's the desk obviously through your browser for reporting and stuff you might want to do once in a while to go deeper on what you're up to. But and then obviously whatever, it could be built so that there could be a real mobile app at some point. Like right now it's just, well, here's a question for you: how do you deal with this stuff? You're literally the perfect guy to talk to about this. So you're building a Livewire app, right? But you're gonna have a mobile app someday. Like how are you handling that? Like are you just using like service classes or actions or whatever, and then you're just having whole separate routes to have like an API for the mobile app? Because the Livewire stuff doesn't really, it's like a whole different world. You have like the update routes and everything. Livewire gives you all this magic. It's not going to work for the phone unless you're doing the wrapper thing, which would be ideal, but I don't know what's involved in that. Again, I don't know if I'm even really doing this. But in general, how do you recommend people handle that? They want to build the web presence with Livewire, obviously, but they're going to need a mobile app. What's your strategy?
I think it would be like 3 phases. I think always big piles of like logic are better served in action classes. Things.
Like all your business logic kind of broken out a bit, the core stuff.
Just like with controllers, like you just don't shove it all in controllers. You either have like really fat models or little action service classes or whatever. That's what I totally would do. So I actually don't think that the conversation is actually very different from like building an inertia app or something where like if you're building an inertia app, you have controllers. If you're building a straight blade app, you have controllers that return a view and pass data in or whatever. And Livewire is similar. You have views, data. It's more, I guess, the post requests where like a normal Laravel app would process a post request, but it would still do like webby things like redirect back and handle it in like a very webby way. So I guess first phase is just like generally keeping complicated stuff in action classes, business logic-y places. Then there's this middle step that's like just make it responsive and don't even do like P-Up, like literally just like have some helper thing to add for people to add your like app icon, to their phone or whatever.
All that could be kind of automated now, which is really nice.
Yeah. And then there's some like crazy future where Livewire has like even just like the turbo native kind of thing where it's not true native. It's just like web views, but has like native navigation and swipe back and forth and stuff. Like that's potential.
That
but
would be awesome.
Yeah. And then there's like go full total Swift UI like total web app.
Right.
And then in that case, it's like just make separate API endpoints for everything. So I don't know. I think you just, I'm not saying you, but the proverbial you, is that the word?
Sure, yeah.
It's
The
just
listener.
like the listener, I guess, or somebody asking this question like a generic way. Be like, well, don't worry about mobile at all. And then just offer like a really good responsive experience, just as you always should. And then you could like do something. And then eventually go like full native and then just have separate API endpoints. It's that middle part that there's no good answer for right now.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky because like the thing with just having responsive is like obviously for some apps that's totally fine, but apps that are more consumer oriented, like there's an expectation that you're going to go in the app store and find it there, which I think that it would be awesome if the app store let you list your PWAified website as in the app store, and even have like APIs where people can do in-app purchase if even though they're just in Safari or whatever, right? But it should all work. That would be awesome, and they could get their cut. That's all great. But that's not how it works right now. So yeah, but you could do the wrapper, which would be kind of my first pass if it needs a real app at some point. And if I ever wanted to make money on it, so it needs to be in the app store, then I would first pass would be just wrap up the website. It's already, don't change anything. Doesn't even need native much other than the in-app purchase, probably, and ship it that way. Yeah, and then you could always like get fancier. But this is the kind of app for me in particular where there's not a lot of magic and sort of it's not like oh man, we got to be down to the bare metal for performance because this is a game or this is like some really interactive thing. It's like somebody's going in and like pushing a button and entering a number and pushing a button and that's it. So for me, I think that would be fine performance wise anyway.
I think I've heard a lot of like pushback on the whole WebView hybrid mobile app thing, like that Turbo does, and
there is, I think, a fair amount.
So it's sort of, I used to think, oh, that's the way. That's have your cake and eat it too. Like that's the way. But I've heard enough pushback and used apps myself that just feel like
just not quite as responsive.
And it has sort of pushed me to have the opinion that you just build a dedicated web app and then you have separate API endpoints for it as if it's like a separate thing, and extract shared logic deeper into your app.
But the problem with that is it's super expensive. So it's like the downside of that is like
for a developer,
it's not even one app. Yeah, right. And it's like two apps, right? So that means now you have three apps because you have like the web app and you have iOS app and you have an Android app, and those are not the same thing. Obviously there's these middle grounds, which you have like the React Native sort of solutions, right? But then even there, like that's sort of really they're doing that, then that should also be your web app too in most cases. It doesn't have to be, but even that's kind of weird though. The thing I don't love about that is like I got Flux, baby. I got like my nice Flux and everything looks nice. And then like so now I have to like make everything look like Flux in some native way, right? Or it looks totally different, which is like what you need a budget just look totally different from the browser app looks completely different from the mobile app, which I guess is one way to go too. But and I'm not doing any of this right now, like I said. But it's kind of interesting to talk about because I do feel like it's a thing, it's like a thing that's out there in the world. If you're
what I'm curious apps. Is what is different about like using Livewire? Because this is a question that exists for any web developer or any framework or ecosystem. And what is different about the answer for somebody that uses Livewire? And I'm thinking like with React Native, if you're using React, you're not using React Native for your actual web app as well, right?
No, you are.
Like, are people really though?
I think they are. Yeah.
Really?
I don't know that for sure. There's definitely people who are like, we're using React Native so that we can get iOS and Android from one code base, and then we have a separate web app. But like, I think the Blue Sky app, I think it's all React Native. I think it's all of it's React Native, for example. Like the mobile app
that's
and
pretty interesting.
Website is one thing.
I have so many questions about like, how do you interact with web APIs with React Native? Like, are you just creating like seams within the app? Like this, like button or whatever, something needs to talk to some web API. You have to have an alternative for a native environment. I don't know. My impression was always that like, it's one of those like things. It's one of those idealistic things. It's like this is so incredible. You just use one system for the whole thing, but then in reality, it's like, because React Native is truly native under the hood, there's like actual native differences he thinks.
I think the way they've done it when I was looking at it, just out of curiosity, was like, yeah, it's like they are there's some magical tailwind, compiling into some native stuff. And like, so it's like, I think it is for everything. Now, I don't know what's, obviously there's trade-offs there. I'm sure certain types of apps, it's not great. Especially if you're like, oh, I built this phone app and obviously I want the web app to be totally different, where it's like a big dashboardy thing and it's like a whole different UI experience. Like, I don't know how that works in terms of can you really do that all just responsively, or is it like maybe I just have a different code path but still in the React Native world?
This is pretty interesting. I'm just looking at their homepage, and it is, so the promise is like learn once, write anywhere, or right. I think in Google it said write once, or whatever. Anyway, but like the code snippet that they have that shows it, on mobile or whatever, it's like return, and it's JSX, but it's returning a component called view and then text inside of it. So it looks very much like Swift UI kind of.
Right.
So maybe it's like this React view. So I wonder how different writing a web app in React Native is, because you're not like, there's no like div, right? With
yeah, it's all these it's like text, image, or it's got these more native based components that you build up, is my understanding. And then there are like UI frameworks you can put on top. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but there is some of that stuff going on. And then it is compiling. That's whole thing is it compiles to native code, right? In each, I don't know. I guess for the web, it's just compiling to normal React type stuff. And obviously doing to Swift and whatever Android is, C# or whatever.
When I was building Flux, I looked at Swift a lot for inspiration and just notes and stuff. They were just among the many places I was looking. And it's pretty cool. Like, it's so not like what we're used to,
right?
With divs and stuff. It's like, if you want something to show up horizontally, we're like, oh, div, flex, gap 2, whatever.
Right.
It's HStack. It's horizontal stack. And it's very much like, it almost feels like they're functions that you're calling, like HStack is like it's like an object, and then you're passing in this list of parameters and it's more objects. It feels very almost back end, the construction of it.
I think so,
I actually did this alternate Flux thing when I was just in the exploration phase, where you would just, every Flux component had this API that you could use alternatively. It was like, you would like return, and I messed with HStack and VStack and stuff. Like, you could construct these entire UIs the same way you would in Swift, where you just be like return, HStack, and then inside of it you would have like input, and then type file would just be like parameter in like PHP, like type : file, and then whatever. Then you're just passing things inside of, if there's a slot in that, it's either a named parameter or it's like arguments that go into it, just arguments all the way down. But it's a pretty interesting way of building an app. Is like, can you really build? And it seems like on mobile it would be so much, because responsive designs are just simpler and more constrained.
Right.
Where like a web, it's like, oh man, if I try to think of this all in VStacks and HStacks and anyway,
I don't know.
The layout stuff is where it's like that would be cool. So it seems like you would step on so many fewer rakes.
I also think there is just a more like the kind of standard now, right? It's like a mobile app. You sort of expect it to be like operating system standard for the most part. And so like they're giving you that base UI and you're just using it. And maybe you have a couple of your little flourishes of your own, right? But like most apps are pretty much mostly the standard UI kit stuff. Whereas like a web, it's like you have more raw ingredients. Like you need to get all the way down there to deeper. It's sort of deeper, lower level. It's like, well, we have to know Flex and deal with this stuff. And that's all stuff that's hidden in the Apple and Swift and the UI kit and stuff. Cause it's like, well, just use this HStack and it's doing Flex type stuff, obviously. But like, it's sort of taking off the rough edges for you a bit there. But I think there is ways to get lower level in there too. If you wanted to do something, it doesn't inherently, it doesn't default do and things like that. But it is a very different way of thinking about it.
A lot of questions. Yeah. Like, how would you build like a sticky, scrollable sidebar? Like those things that you don't really build on mobile.
Right.
I don't know. How would you like absolutely position an X button like over a code block at the top right with like margin and padding and add like animate? I don't know. It's like, anyway.
There's probably a way, but I have
Probably a
no idea
way,
how to do it.
but it's a totally different. Anyway, random tangent,
Oh
mobile
man,
stuff. So
I do love the idea. If I had time, I would love to build a mobile app, like a real
I
mobile
know.
app. Like under no
Same.
scenario, even if this thing was, I sell it and it does great, it's huge. Which who knows if any of that will ever even happen. I would never build the mobile app myself, even if it wasn't like because I just couldn't. I just don't have time to deal with it. But like, it would be cool if I had time to like just build them. I'm just building an iOS app. Forget Android. Just build an iOS app. That's what I'm building. I'm just gonna
I think
learn these APIs.
I think it would be a really valuable experience. I tried to at least read through as much documentation as I could to just that's where like the Livewire 4 is going to use this @wire syntax in the top of the blade views to reference if you're using like if you have a class for your component, you just say @wire and then pass in the class name instead of it being like class first and then returning like a render method, whatever. It'll be view first that references a class or the inline class in @wire and then end @wire, whatever. And I got that from Swift. Somebody at the Livewire partners call was like, "Dude, check out Swift." And I was like, "It's literally what they do.
Like
it's like you can do it in the view and have your Swifty stuff, like programmery stuff, at the top."
Yep.
In the full form, or you can just say like whatever, @class or whatever they have, and it just references
then it can go
like
wherever. You don't have to have like this, like the name the same or the render method or whatever. Less magical in a way. Like
less
it's
magical.
More,
it's view first. It shifts it from being class first to being view first, which I think makes a lot more sense. And then it opens up a lot of doors for like file-based routing and things like that if you care to do that. But anyway, and I got that just from looking at Swift. So I feel like it would be such a valuable thing for me to just like hold up in a cabin for a week and just learn Swift and start building stuff and be like, oh, like these things are really nice about it. Like, how could we bring that over?
Especially since Livewire and now with Flux, like you are crossing over to the front a lot now. You know, it's like Livewire's always been that, right? But it's like you're straddling both sides of the network here a bit. And that's where, I mean, I know even Taylor has talked about taking a lot of Laravel stuff from ASP or different places. It's like, I think especially at your guys where you're building open source tools, but even for other people internal building your own tools, it's like that time is usually valuable to go check out what other people are doing in other communities and seeing how things work, right? Because we're just so used to, okay, this is what I do here, and I can just autopilot my way through the basic setup and how I'm going to structure things. But it's like, oh, there's this whole other world where people build apps completely differently.
Like everybody's, you know, when I think to do that, it's like, oh yeah, you know, I'll like build a little React thing or build a little Vue thing or Svelte or just, you know, but that's all the same. And we've seen all that.
Right.
It's like, go get up like a .NET Blazor app. Go boot up Salesforce Lightning Web Components. Go hang out with Swift UI. Like now you're like really in a different world that nobody's in. And I think there's a lot of like siloed knowledge and patterns that Salesforce actually does some really cool stuff that nobody even knows about or talks about. And they're like way ahead in some ways. In a lot of other ways, they just are way behind. But
Well, that's, I mean, because everybody's just in their own little circle, right? It's like,
you're just innovating.
Laravel, and you're like, oh, Rails and Laravel. Okay, it's like, I get what's going on the internet, but it's like, meanwhile, there's millions of iOS developers and Android developers. We have no idea what they're doing. We're like, oh, there's probably a few people building Android apps. It's like millions and millions of developers. Like, and it's just a whole different way of thinking about it and dealing. Everything's reactive, right? All that stuff. It's all like the total opposite. It's kind of where web devs are more going. It's like, well, I want React, I want Livewire, I want these things that are inherently reactive, which is obviously a big change. Whereas the mobile app devs have always been developing that way, or at least, you know, mostly always developing that way. Of like, no, you push a button and stuff happens in the UI, like, and then it goes back to the server or whatever. So it's interesting. All right, what's going on with Flux? How's Flux going? It's fully transitioned.
Flux is good. Flux is great. It's how is Flux? Flux is a lot of work. Like you were saying, that like getting farther out into, basically it's just the scope of what I'm trying to tackle has just increased in an unbelievably massive way.
Right.
And I just feel that like so deeply. It's like sometimes I'm just like, I am literally like one dude writing like React, writing like Inertia, writing ShadCN, right? You know, like every piece of the puzzle is like all in this one thing. And so it's fun. And that's part is like kind of exhilarating because like you're tackling some problem and you just have the whole context of everything. You're like, oh, like, well, that's a DOM diffing problem. It's like where if like ShadCN is building something and runs across some little hiccup, he can't just go like deep debug like the VDOM like patching system and then like make a pull request,
right.
or like and just ship
He
it the next
can, but
day.
he doesn't know it's you can make anything happen you need to make happen on both sides of the
For
equation.
him to make it happen, it would take,
right.
it has to go through all this red tape. It could never happen. It's like,
right.
It's nice to be able to just be like, oh, like we need, it's nice to have the full context now to be like,
Yeah.
these things need all of these things to enable all of these things. And so that part's kind of fun and exhilarating, and working on Flux helps Livewire and Alpine because they get upgrades, because Flux demands those upgrades, and Flux is everything to everyone. So it's, it's whatever, everything to everyone in the sense that it is trying to tackle common application problems. So things that I could punt on before, I can't really punt on as much anymore, because it's like,
it does lock you into
I have an answer for this thing, know?
Right. Because before I was like, well, you're building your component and you could just say, listen, you have to build it differently for now because it's, I'm not fixing that right now, or I'm not doing that or whatever. Whereas now it's like, no, somebody paid you money and it's like, you said this thing does this and it doesn't do it. And now what are you gonna do? You gotta fix it. Like, that's just how it is. So yeah, I don't know. I've been liking Flux a lot though, man. It's really good.
Tell me about Flux. Tell me, like, are there any things like what?
It.
Give me something about the experience of using this thing that has been interesting, helpful, hurtful.
No, I think it's been huge. Like, so for me, when I start a new project, right, it's like, and I know Laravel in and of itself works a lot on this, but it's like the faster you can get people into the business logic and doing whatever the thing you want the app to do is, like, the more likely you are to continue working on it and for it to ultimately succeed, right? But so many projects fall off way before that, because it's like, you don't even get that far, or you kind of get that far, but it's a mess a little bit. And then then you just get sidetracked and whatever. So the more there's just like the guardrails and the standards, and like, I can just use Breeze and I can just use this thing and that thing. I can just build it up real quick, like boom, 2 seconds. I already have like an app with authentication and all that stuff. And I feel like Flux is then now that next layer. It's like, okay, so you normally get that far and you just look at this empty screen and you're like, oh, that's like kind of a bummer. And now I guess I gotta like, definitely for me, I'm more of a UI first developer. I know like other people can go just from the back end purely and be like, I'm just like spitting out JSON until like the last minute and then I throw the UI on it. I like to go the other direction of like, this is what the person's using. I think UI first, and then I deal with the other stuff on the back end. So it's like, okay, well, now I need like header navigation and sidebar navigation. Like, so that's like a multi-day adventure of like getting all that stuff to even work. And it looks like crap, obviously, to start and all that. So with Flux, it's great. It's like, boom, like I have header and sidebar instantly. It's like the same 1 second thing as installing Breeze. And it's like, this is awesome. Like it already looks like a real application in the first use. So that's such a huge thing. Definitely was like the biggest surprise that you had that in there. I wasn't expecting you to have that stuff in there. And I think it's really smart and really just amazing feature to just get you in your app. It looks like an app. It looks great. There's nice looking sidebar. It's responsive. Like, it's all the stuff. The thing pops out. There's a hamburger menu. It's all great. Like, you are ready to actually build the first screen of your actual app right then, instantly. So that alone is huge.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That it's so funny how much of a just last minute, like, I'll just explore this and see, like, is this something we should even offer? And it wasn't even like, a lot of libraries don't offer that stuff.
Very few.
But I just started like working on it. Whatever. The amount of work that it actually took is like, if you look at if there was like a time percentage next to each sidebar item in the Flux docs, that would be like 40%, I think. And then, like, some would be like 10%, 2%. That one is just huge, which I didn't expect also, because it's just styling. Like, there's not that much behavior. How could this be like that complicated? But anyway, whatever.
And that's why it's so great, because it's like, other component libraries give you all those parts, right? Like, there's a nav bar and there's a sidebar and there's a modal thing and there's all a slide in for the menu. Like, it's all there.
Like, Bootstrap has always had like nav bar.
Right.
But it's like, well, I need the thing.
But
like,
I need to all work together. It's like, yes, I can shove the nav bar and the sidebar and I can make this page look good. But then the responsive doesn't work, right? So I have to go figure out all that stuff. And like, it doesn't all just work. Whereas this just works and it's just great. And I don't have to think about it. And even if it's not perfect, like exactly how I want it in the end, it's like, I'm past the mental block of it looks like total crap and I can't even function until it like works reasonably well. It's like, no, I'm past all that. It looks great. and I can, whatever, if I want to tweak where the logo thing is or add some buttons or whatever, like all that stuff can happen as you develop it, but you're ready to go instantly. So that was huge. Yeah, and I haven't even gone that deep yet. We're pretty much as far as I am for the most part, other than listing out some tables and things like that, just to get some data in there and like just see what it looks like. But the components are good. There's some like missing docs and stuff. I know you're super busy. I think that'd be cool to like add those.
Is it you're talking about like the text component,
like Flux profile? I think isn't like actually in the docs, and like
so let's talk about that
something
briefly.
else is not
so
in the
for the
docs.
listener, Flux profile is something, it's a component I made just for the layouts. So the in Flux, like these layouts, you copy and paste a big chunk of, there's like Flux components, but also just a lot of, Tailwind and, HTML. You copy and paste this in your layout file, and now you have like sidebars and nav bars, and you can tweak them, whatever, and header nav bars, whatever. But certain parts of it, I would just like look at the what people are copying and pasting into their app, and I'd be like, that's too much. Like they're not going to want to ever touch this because that's too many divs and that's too many classes, and they're not going to want to change it at all. And so profile was one of those things that I was just like, and there's so many different variations of it that I was like, okay, I'm just going to pull a blade component out of this simply for the beginning. It was simply to just make it look visually better as I'm like looking at it. So I never thought of it as like, I never thought of it as like a component that somebody would use anywhere else except for right there in that layout.
Yep.
And they're not going to need to know how else to use it, because the usages of it are laid out in the code they're copying. And that was just, I don't know, that was my thinking.
What I think thinking about it, so from the outside, it's like, oh, this is a component that does stuff without like digging into it, right? So it's like, okay, well, I don't really want it to look like the way it looks. So what are the like parameters that change the stuff or whatever? And it doesn't necessarily have any of those, because it's more just like compiling up a bunch of ugly HTML. But like, you think it does do stuff because it's a component like the other components, but it's maybe not. That wasn't the intention, but that's what it looks like from the outside. So
interesting, right? To me, it's just an include. It's just like a way to just compress this. But there's
no way to tell that.
Yeah.
When you like so, and it's one of the first things you hit, because like you take your sidebar and it's in the sidebar, I think, or wherever it is, it's in there, and so you're like, oh, what's this thing do? Like you don't know, but
interesting.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's fine. Obviously.
So I could put a sidebar item called profile, but then it would feel like a whole page and a whole sidebar item just for this thing called profile that's only meant to be used here. That the documentation would literally just be kind of showing like it in a sidebar,
right?
And it, that's what it does. I guess that it would be like you can pass an image attribute, and then it'll have like an image. You can pass the name or title or whatever it is, and then it'll have that, and you can make it. You can put it as like a button in a drop down to make it a drop down. All right. It's something to think about, because I've heard that before from people, and it never registered with me. It's like, well, why?
I think because you hit it so early too, and then also, I think it's the kind of thing people are going to want to customize a lot, because it's like, well, I actually want this to look a little different in my app or whatever, and so then
and for me, it's like just divs it, just delete it,
just do what you want, right? Yeah. So. But yeah, I think that's cool. It's there. So I don't know. Maybe it doesn't need to be documented, or it's just one line somewhere in the sidebar docs. It's like, hey, this is like a little
maybe
just
it
so
can
you're
be
aware.
Pushed down below, like below the like. Here's your big layouts. Here's all the components that are used in them.
Yeah, something like that.
And then we add the only, like, people aren't going to really find them by just scanning, but if we add search, which we need to add to the docs.
That was going to be my next thing with search. I was like, oh, search would be nice. Like,
gotta add search. I've been punting on that because search is one of those things I don't want to do poorly.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to do poorly when you just slap Algolia doc search on it. Like, it works, but it's not tailored, Anyway.
That was one of the things, actually, with the profile stuff. It's like, because then you don't really know. You're like, well, it's undocumented, or am I just not finding the documents because I can't search? So like, I don't know if it's in there.
Yeah, we need
so
searching.
I can go to Google and search Google, whatever, all that stuff. And
I'm having trouble with some of this documentation stuff. Like, I also hemmed and hawed on typography, because there is a Flux text component that straight up just does the right colors for dark mode and light mode.
Ooh.
And there's a Flux link component that adds like a nice underline. We use it in the docs all over the place.
Oh, I didn't even know about these.
And there's variants on the link. There's subtle, there's normal, and then there's a ghost. I don't know. There's like a few variants that we use for ourselves. And when I'm using Flux and to build stuff in the Flux app, like I end up reaching for text. I reach for like heading and subheading, which are documented.
Yeah.
But then I reach for text, link, and there's probably another one that I'm missing. I think there's another typography related one, but those are hidden. They,
Yeah, I want those.
But how do
those.
you? So my initial thought was I'll make a typography, link,
right,
like, and then have them all listed in there. But when I like tackled it, I don't know, for some reason it felt, I hate the word typography also.
Yeah, right. It's more than that too. If it's like the background colors potentially of things.
Yeah, it just, and then people would go to it to look for. I mean, people already want like a Flux Pros or Flux, just a place to put
pros.
Yeah, which I could see doing. I actually have my own version of that for areas of the docs where you just want to write H1, H2, P, and have it styled.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, Ian Landsman, I got to figure out a way to do that. If you think of anything.
Because you do want to just live in Flux land, it's like every time I go out of Flux land, I feel like, oh, this is like kind of a bummer.
I know.
Like I'm out of Flux land and I just want to stay in Flux. It's like when you're in Swift UI, like you pretty much like have to stay in that. And when you break out, it's like you're really explicitly breaking out to do something really weird and custom that isn't just the normal, I'm putting stuff together to make a normal app screen, right? It's like I have to do something crazy. So like that's, I think, the nature of how you want to feel about it. Is like, oh, Flux has all the pieces and I can put them together in cool ways and not have to break out too much if I don't have to. Because it does come up like, with the text, like I had to go look up like what the color was of the text. I already had to do that. Like, what is the color of the text in the things everywhere else so that I can then match it in my stuff and all that kind of, that kind of thing.
Yeah. This is the kind of thing that from like a principles perspective or an authorship perspective, I look at like something like Tailwind UI. When you're using Tailwind UI, you don't feel like you have to stay in Tailwind UI.
No.
Right? Like you just copied and pasted a bunch of HTML, you own it now. Like if you need some variation on it, they give you enough inspiration, but then you just go on from there.
Yes and no. I think though, I agree with you that you don't feel that way, but I do feel like that kind of gets people in trouble with it. So like I feel like I've gotten in trouble with it because it's like I'm taking part of a design system and shoving it in somewhere.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't really always work exactly like I hope it would.
And you're not equipped to extend that design system on your own.
Right.
But
now I have
expected
to. Right, exactly.
And that's the
nice
problem.
Little chunk, but then the rest is not like that. And I'm not really sure how to move it all around to make it work right or whatever. So yeah.
This is the difficulty of something like Flux because, well, you're not copying and pasting in HTML, you're using components.
Right.
And so that makes it you even feel less capable, or even you just don't even want to do your own stuff.
That's black box. I want that to be a black box.
That's why I'm like,
I'm like, I would go to the docs and I could dig down into the code, but like my instinct is go to the docs because this is a black box and just like the docs are going to tell me what to do rather than me going into the black box and figuring out what's going on.
So there's some like principles that I have that I think conflict with that spirit and actually harm the whole project. And one of them is, harm and help. It helps keeping scope small, which is a help.
Yeah.
But it harms because it keeps scope small. But it's like, I'll think like, well, if you need, X specific thing, you should design X specific thing and you should create the blade component for X specific thing and then use that inside your app. Or if you need some variant about it, publish the blade view and then modify it and now you own it. And
blade view.
Right. Nobody's publishing blade views.
No,
Nobody wants to publish a blade view. No. And this is so tough because it's like, as I'm authoring these things, I'll keep scope small with the rationale that people can do this themselves.
Yeah.
But if everybody's not doing this themselves, now it's just a limited library and that part's frustrating.
Right.
But if we do everything for everyone, then it becomes, I have an example in my head of something that, do you remember like when Bootstrap came out with templates?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if I remember that specifically.
Okay, they came out with
vaguely,
they had like 2 or 3. It was like application and and this was a huge deal.
Right.
Because they had nothing besides just Bootstrap before, and everybody else had all the Envato, all those themes. Mm-hmm. And the themes that existed before, like on Theme Forest, did you ever use Bootstrap themes, like the admin thing or whatever?
Not like in anger. I bought them and then not used them, but yeah,
okay.
But I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. So these themes that you would go buy, these third-party themes, they did everything, and they had variations for everything. This massive heaping pile of everything you would ever need. Yep. And then Bootstrap comes out with their theme, which is so limited. It's the pros and cons are right there. I don't need to say them. But I don't want Flux to be a third-party bootstrap theme that has everything in the world, is overwhelming. It's just a massive heap. You know, I want it to be something that's like very, you know what I'm saying? Do we offer like
but
Avatar?
I think those are different.
Let me give you this thought experiment. You tell me, because I think this is a good way to put a point on this.
Yeah.
We need an Avatar component at some point.
Okay.
Let's say we have an Avatar component. We're probably going to do rounded borders, like a rounded rect by default, because that's the style we have in other areas. Okay. Mm-hmm. People are likely going to want circle avatars. Mm-hmm. If we offer them, do we offer both? Because the reason I think this matters, this question, is because if we offer both, now we're offering two paths in the design system.
Right.
If you use a circle, you should probably use a circle everywhere else you're showing avatars.
Right.
If you use the rounded rect, you should probably use this everywhere. It's like, what is your theming taste? And now we forked the story, and now it's everything to everyone, and it makes me sad. Where if it's like, no, if you want a circle thing, you publish the view and you change it or something. I don't know. So tell me about this avatar borders. And
I view this all a little bit differently, I think. I like that Flux is opinionated. And I think that lets you start quicker. I think you're doing a really great job with it looking nice and modern and all those things. So I would want to defer to you, generally speaking, on rounded rectangles
avatar
versus circles.
Styling. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the ability's there for me to change it. So if I really don't like it, I can publish that component and I can do whatever I want in there. Great. And like if I really need to do that, like that's me then stepping beyond. And it's like, okay, I know now when there's Flux updates, this is such a big thing to me that I published a component and I'm going to now manage any changes between the official changes and my published one. And I'm taking that on. Right. But to me, like the WordPress or like a Bootstrap admin panel, right? That does like, they're trying to sell a full admin panel. It's got all the JavaScript magic. It's got doing all kinds of stuff. They're always like, it's like WordPress themes have the same thing. It's like, here's a WordPress theme that's it does everything. It's like there's animations and it's all crazy. Right? How does I don't even know how people use them because it's like so crazy. It's like, how can you implement something in it? It's going to be very bizarre. But anyway, so that's the one side. But see, to me, I feel like Flux is more like, if you look at the other successful kind of component libraries, just still components, not like a whole, here's an admin panel, but it's just components. They tend to have a lot of components. Like there's just hundreds of components, right?
Yeah.
And they tend to eventually have like theme support in some manner.
Yeah.
Like, this is the roundy theme. This is the rounded rect theme. This is the whatever, right? Like, I think you're a ways from needing that, but I do think the like components, more components is better is probably a truism. That seems to me like the truism. Like all the big component libraries that are commercial, there's a lot of components in there, and there's variations of things you would think are similar, and there's like, that's the way they kind of go. I think it's gonna be hard for you to get away from that if you want to keep it like going commercially. I feel like that's kind of the thing. Is like people are going to want more components. People are like, I'm here with money. Like you don't have the component I need. So at some point it's like, well, you could turn away the money or you could just give them the component they need, and you got to make that choice, right? And so I think I think your instinct's right to not go all the way to like it's a total batteries included, you just drop this in level of its insane customization abilities and things like that. But at the same time, I think you're going to need more components that do different things,
for sure.
And slight variations that are annoying. Like this is tags versus a combo box, and what's that even difference mean? And all those kind of things. But
okay, I got two questions for you in this vein. I got first question is, okay, as I'm authoring these components, like so I'm working on select right now, but I'm always like working on some component, adding a variant or whatever. And I want to add, okay, here's an example. The select dropdown right now has check marks next to what is selected, which is the same as the selectable menu items. This is like the pattern for something is selected. It's a single borderless Heroicons check mark. And whenever this works fine and it looks minimal, but when you add in multi-select, which we kind of have for selectable menu items, but forget about that because that's a little more niche. Like a multi-select dropdown.
Yep.
You can communicate the multi-select nature of it by having a checkbox as the indicator, next to the thing. So I thought that like this is probably a necessary thing. I'm not sure. It probably isn't necessary at the outset, but I feel like it's a good addition is to offer. So I made a prop called indicator, and you can say indicator equals checkbox right on your select, and now you get a checkbox indicator. And it actually uses the exact same HTML and Tailwind as the actual checkbox in your app. So it's the exact same checkbox. It looks, except it doesn't have a shadow because it's like not independent, just like little details like that. Yep. So it's nice, but I'm adding this, and now I have a bunch of extra code in these blade files. Like I'm checking for the presence of indicator. I'm checking, and now it's a whole separate component that's been extracted where literally before it was an icon hard-coded in a blade file. Right. Now there's like a PHP conditional. There's a new file include. There's a whole new blade component. And if you multiply that, let's say like, oh, well, that's in one option component, which is how many option components are there in one select menu, let alone 10, and maybe 10 inside of a row of a table where there's 100. And it's like, you just keep doing this. And now you have these blade components,
thousands of
with
components,
so many conditionals and so much PHP metal, like that it's going to get slow.
Yeah, well, just even the Laravel overhead of, I know Taylor's worked on that fairly recently of improving that, but it can get to be like, where there's a lot of blade components, and then things get a little bit wonky. Yeah.
Right. Like this is something that I think is more of a tax than other templating setups, like than using React or Vue. There's more of a tax here for adding extra conditionals, extra complexity and whatever. But you also just don't want to have a blade file that's literally everything is hard coded. It's just, that'd be so gross. And again, like, even PHP loops are slow. Like that's a big reason that this, if you multiply like 100 item loop times 100 in a page, like your page is now slow.
Right.
So I don't know. That is also rattling around in my head. That's like, I want to add all these nice things where they make sense, like indicator equals checkbox. But if I keep doing this, I'm this early on in the Flux process. If I keep doing this, this is going to be, any given page is going to take forever just to render the blade files. Right.
And you can't have that. There's a responsibility you have to that this isn't like slowing down people's applications to, otherwise it's not usable, right? Like then that's its own weird set of issues. So you can't have that.
We need caching somehow, because like this is what solves this problem. We shouldn't have to restrict the amount of variance in a component because Blade is slow or PHP is slow. Like we should have something where like this is a cached component or a cached prop set or something that's like,
or some pre-compilation step, like or something
heavier pre-compilation.
Yeah.
Like your blade directives get compiled down to PHP, but
it's still including, or there's some tax with like a component that executes on every time through, right? Like there's some, it's spinning up a class internally or whatever, right? And
there's a class, there's a handful because of all the anonymous component stuff. There's file lookup stuff, there's stuff, and it's blade components are not ethereal. Like they're not invisible.
They're not as light as you would.
They're not as light as you might think they should be. And Livewire components are the same way. It's I do wonder where most of the performance hit comes from, and if there's a way to just do some I don't know. And then I'm like, well, maybe the long-term play is inventing a new templating engine that's like totally optimized, for like really heavy stuff. And then we're
hard though. I like that it's just Blade, it's like,
I know. Yeah.
Maybe you could fix Blade, or maybe contribute the new template engine to Laravel core or something. Maybe they're going to come up with a new template.
Oh yeah. No, I'm unbelievably hesitant always ever to diverge from like what is knowledge for a Laravel developer, Like,
well, that's the Tamek. He's going to move it to the blading the default, I think, right? Because like people get confused by Blade not being the default and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, I guess if I was you, I would just make it like a conditional, and there's code there, and it's like or not even have the checkboxes. But I do agree the checkbox makes sense. It would be nice. Can you just do it visually with like the checkbox icons, like a checkbox in a box,
that, but then
something?
Yeah, like then you get in. You're adding. You still have to add a bunch more Tailwind in HTML,
Right.
Like there are ways to not have a PHP conditional, but have a front end styling conditional. But now you just have more HTML being shipped and you're slowing down your app in other ways, you know, like network latency, rendering and memory on the front end, and whatever.
But see, that stuff I feel like is less because it's like really heavily optimized now. Like it's being compiled or compressed to death, right? And like I feel like that's a much less of a hit shipping more HTML than making PHP work really hard to like render 1,000.
I should measure that
extra components
because like maybe there's areas.
I don't think
where...
it's going to be even close. I think that the more HTML will be way less of an issue than
really
the PHP execution. Yeah, that's what I would think.
I should measure this so that I have somewhat of an answer because it would change the way I author these things. Yeah, that's a good nugget.
You should look into that. I'd be interested if you actually come up with some data there because I would just think I would be very surprised if it's not true. But and you got to do it on a server though, right? Like not on your Mac, like on a server, a normal, like 2 GB DigitalOcean.
Yeah, can't be doing M4
standard. Yeah, not the Monster M4 with the super fast disks, and it's like all magical. Like no, just like a regular server somebody's actually using.
Yeah.
I just think because like you got Cloudflare now, people are using it stuff. Like there's just a lot of, but even just regular Nginx stuff, like it's gonna be BZ2 zipped and whatever. All this stuff is gonna be super crushed and shipped over the wire, very small. And whereas like just making PHP grind through 10,000 templates on this big table that's got these checkbox drop downs is gonna be I think quite burdensome on the server. But I don't know.
Second question I had for you, Ian. Charts, WYSIWYG. I can actually build a date picker on my own. Like I feel that is within my capability. So I don't have to like, that's a possibility that I just tackle that and that's in Flux.
I don't know if I even like that idea, to be honest with you, but continue.
I gave myself a few hours to explore it and I was like, it would be fun. I'll have a lot of fun building it, not a lot of fun maintaining it.
That's the thing. I feel like you could build it, but like I feel like there's gonna be 8 million edge cases that are maybe have already been discovered in some of these other
super quickly.
libraries.
This is why building a date picker is actually doable because it's a fixed set of elements. Even though it feels very dynamic and you're changing month views and everything,
right?
You don't have to do dynamic rendering at an element level. You can literally have a div with 31 or whatever 32 elements,
or that it's showing or not showing or whatever.
Yeah, and then they just
get more of the logic. Isn't there going to be like?
Well, there's going to be tons of logic.
Date time logic. I guess. Well, if you're using one of those underlying, like was that Luxor or whatever, Luxum?
I would want to just use native date, which is decent now. But yeah, there's some question marks. But anyway, I explored it enough to go like, this could actually be like a fixed set of HTML elements with Tailwind components, and then all the logic is just toggling data attributes. Right. And this could actually work. Where before I thought like there needs to be all this custom rendering,
math, and
like I think it. Okay, so skip that. Charts, WYSIWYG.
Right. Don't build those, please. We have other stuff we need you to build. You can't build those. They're too big. Yeah.
Too big. No. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. I'm not building charts in WYSIWYG. Okay. That's not happening.
All right. Good.
No way. The question is, does Flux need these things?
It absolutely has to have them.
Okay, so let's say Flux needs a WYSIWYG editor. There's big ones are TipTap and text, or what's Tiny MCE or whatever. Tiny MCE, TipTap, and Quill are like the ones that people use.
Yeah.
Is the story like Caleb just uses them, finds which one is best, makes it look like Flux, and offers the basic like bold, italics, left align, right align, and it just is decent enough, and we call it a day? And then when people go, you need to support dragging a file in and like short codes and blah, blah, blah. And I just go, no.
I don't know. Let me rephrase my theory. I think the WYSIWYG is less critical because I feel like the WYSIWYG, that's a really monster type of thing. And also there's going to be tons of requests about it, right? And it's like here, you could send people to somewhere that's sort of reasonable for that. It's like Tiny MCE or is basically what you should use. Or if you really don't like it, you could use TipTap to build your own WYSIWYG, basically, that's fully custom.
Yeah.
And those are those are two good options. Like the whole world uses them. I mean, they're terrible, but they're good in the sense of like you can't build your own. It's literally impossible. So fine, these are what you can do, right? Whereas like, I think the graphs are different. The graphs are really annoying and hard, and like coming up with an API just yourself for them. Every time I've used graphs, I'm like, it's so terrible. Like the native thing that JavaScript library gives you is always horrible. and then you want to do
They
something
have
simpler.
something?
Like, you know, it's just like
What do they
whatever
have?
it
What
is, whatever the
native?
random raw ingredients you get with the library, right, is like bad. And then from there, you're like, well, maybe I could build my own wrapper, but that's bad. So like, that's
I
where it's
hate
like
charting so much.
Flux, at least it's like it's going to look like Flux, which is a key element, right?
That
it's going
is
to be
a
a
key
nice,
element.
pretty thing. Whereas again, the WYSIWYG, it's just so utilitarian. It's like I drop it in there, even if it looks slightly different. I just have no choice, and whatever kind of is what it is. I'm sure somebody will come up with like the open source tiny MCE theme that looks like Flux at some point or whatever, and whatever. But like
apparently Quill has a theme called something minimal or whatever
that looks
it's
clean
like the same
or
thing.
whatever.
It's like a Shadcn vibe look. It just like fits in Flux like well
but
enough.
the chart, I feel like that is like, man, I want the Porzio touch on that. I feel like a little bit.
Okay, here's my problems with that. First problem is like using Chart.js or D3. Like you're going to use one of those,
right?
And they're big.
Yeah.
So am I taxing everybody's app with this, or is there some extra opt-in where it's like you want to use the charts, you got to enable that at Flux scripts, you know, charts is true, and now like, okay, you said it, now you get the extra 500 kilobytes or whatever,
right?
Probably 200 something, I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, you're probably asking the wrong person about that. I never ever care about those things. My JS file could be 10 megabytes. I don't care. Like everybody downloads it once. All the caching's good. It's edge cache. It's cache in the browser. Like,
yeah.
For my kind of apps I build, I don't care. I mean, obviously, there's people out there. If you're like serving people in ultra rural areas somewhere in South America, and you're like, this extra megabytes killing me. I mean, I'm sure that is true. I don't.
Yep.
The apps I build, I don't care about that. So to me, it doesn't matter.
Okay. All right. So forget about that. Doesn't matter. Just include it. It's all good. Then it's like, you know, you just look at one of these sites, and there's 10 million different. I mean, look at the config charts, right? Of any given chart.
And one chart is always like 20 different charts. It's not even like, oh, it's one chart. It's like, well, you could turn this chart into this other chart by doing this option. And like, you know, it's all,
right.
You could layer charts. Like, I have the line bar over
over the bar chart.
Over the bar chart.
Yeah, you got to have both. And then, you got.
Maybe I spoke too quick. Maybe you don't need it.
Okay. This is just a fundamental, like, question. Is it better to have loved and lost? No. Is it better to have one limited? We have a line chart. Let's just say, for example, we have a line chart.
Yeah.
That's by default. There's variant line and variant bar. Okay, here it is. Flux :chart. Okay. There's colon labels and there's colon values. They're both arrays. They have to match up. Then there's variant line. There's variant bar. That's it.
It's trash.
It's
trash. Like the thing is, no real app. It's like every fake app is like, here's a little graph, right? And it's like a nice little graph. But real apps always need like, I want to click. I want to be able to have clickable things on the graph, or like, you know, it's like you need then the lower level stuff.
Yeah,
I think I'm going full circle. I don't think you need either of these. Like that. Well, here's the thing: in the trade-off world of, do I want Flux multi-select that's freaking amazing?
Yeah.
Or do I want some half-ass chart thing? I want multi-select that's freaking amazing. Like that's what I want, right? Or I want, I don't know, whatever. Pretty much any of the like more traditional components, like really awesome versions of those, I want more than graphs or WYSIWYG, because I know at the end of the day those are really crazy. The half-baked version's not going to be the thing I actually need to use anyway. Maybe even like data table, like even with the table stuff, I was like, man, I thought the tables were a little more fleshed out. Like now they're really just tables.
This is one of those examples I almost took it out because I thought, is it better to have like, here's Flux styled literal tables, like you got to do everything, or is it better to not have it at all?
Right.
I went with have a minimal version of it, but it's like you have to do so much. You know,
so I'd rather you spend time in terms of like these kind of really big ugly components. Like I'd rather have you do the data table stuff.
Data tables, good data tables, solid multi-select. That all comes first. Like you don't have to. Yeah.
And then down the road, you could always do those other things. People know those things are ugly and they'll do themselves. Maybe there's some middle ground. Could you do like, here's the Chart.js like style guide, so it looks like Flux. Like you're
like
still
a
on your own
copy
for
and pastable
doing
blade component. Like
you
have to paste this. It's a full component. You just have to paste it in so that now you're on the hook for changing your chart.js customization. Yeah.
Right. Like you're in your own on the JS land part of it, but like here's the basic component or the config of a chart.js file that's like how to make it look like Flux roughly. Yeah. So it looks reasonable, it's using the right colors, whatever.
Right.
But then you're on your own for like actually feeding it JSON and doing all the stuff you have to do to make it render a chart. Like,
yeah,
you could do something like that, I think. But yeah, the more I think about it, like, I really want those other things a lot. And those are things that are so much more, I think, important for Flux to have, for that everybody's going to use, you know, whereas like charts is not something everybody's going to use. WYSIWYG is not something everybody's going to use.
Yep.
And also there's just the expectation people have that those are hard, they're ugly. They know that there's these big things that exist open source that they can go use if they need it. Like they're not depending on you for that really. Like they know you're just going to be wrapping up this other big thing because it's a huge monster project, right? So yeah, I think I was wrong. I went too fast.
All right. No, I love it. I mean, we're far on time, but I have other questions. What do you think?
I mean, if it's good with you, it's good with me.
It's good with me. Multi-select, Ian. So this is what I'm like deep in right now.
Yeah.
I want to know. I'm standing at this fork in the road between select, variant equals, and then a name, and a very just kind of like black boxy, you know, like if you want a searchable avatar select with like collapsible avatars and stuff, I don't know, like it's just like select variant avatar select or something, I don't know.
Right.
And then the alternative being the full form composable like Flux select. I'm thinking of adding variant custom. So it's like Flux like variant custom. Now everything inside of here, you're going to lay everything out. So you lay out Flux trigger, Flux button with Flux selected. You lay out Flux options and then Flux option inside of those. If you want a search box inside Flux options, you would do like Flux : search. So now you have it all. It's all laid out. So you can add in props where they need to go. Like for example, the multi-select, you know, if you're selecting multiple and you want to say 3 selected, or you want to say 3 items selected, or you want it to have comma separated. Right now, if it's all wrapped up inside just Flux : select, I have to have a prop called like selected hyphen suffix. And then you pass in 3 selected, or they're like selected hyphen max, like 3 items, and then you start truncating. You know, it's all these prefixed, like hard to name props. Where if you're writing these sub-composed components, it's really easy to expose these really nice little poignant props. But is it like that so much that it's like one little multi-select is this whole thing?
I mean, everybody knows multi-selects are painful. And if you're the person looking for the custom multi-select where it's like, you know, like a person's icon with a name that's bolded, and I want a thing underneath that says how many help desk tickets are assigned to them. And like I have like a really custom thing I want, right? Like that's different from, to me, these are almost different things. Like I tend to think of all these as different things. And as I was listening to your notes on work, I was feeling like these should be, I don't know if internally they're different.
I know.
But I kind of felt like they were like, there's like select that does multiple selection, which is kind of like what you have now, but you can select multiple. Like that's kind of it. It's very straightforward. I don't want checkboxes for some reason. So I want a multi-select bar because I want it to be tighter vertically type of thing or whatever. And that's one thing. And then there's like tags or things that are like tags. So I would probably just call tags, even if again, it's actually a multi-select. And that's one thing. And then there's, like what you're talking about, which is like really custom, either even individual select or multi-select, where like, I want the UI part to be like this crazy custom card looking thing and nothing like a normal select. And so, there I'm going to have to jump through some hoops because it's all custom. So like you can't do every variation of that, right? Like that's where composable makes sense, I think.
Right. Okay, so this is sort of where I'm at now. I spent the weekend, as you know, like just building the most insane stuff just to see like what it is like if I did want to go. To me, this is what I consider to be the most gnarly extreme version of this. And it's actually, your version is even more gnarly because you have like how many tickets are open for this person, but a multi-select that's searchable. The options are generated server side, so there's like proper loading indicators and everything. When you run out of searches or whatever, there's now, you can create a new one. It'll show you like create new based on your search query. And that also goes to the server and comes back and puts it in. And the selected values show up as pills or tags. And the input is like in line with those tags. And when they overflow, it detects that and it adds collapsed pills.
Right.
That to me is like very valuable. Everybody wants this. It's so gnarly.
Yeah.
And I built it to know what's involved. And there are like, it's possible. And there's a world where we offer it, but it's like, I don't know. So
It'd be a big one.
Anyway, what I decided is that this week I'm going to ship multi-select, what you're talking about. Basic. It's literally what we have, but with multiple.
Right.
And I had to go in this whole journey to make some decisions about what even that looks like.
Yeah.
Which, let me run this by you. It's when you select the first one, it's just like a single select. When you select the second one, it shows 2 selected instead of a comma separated situation.
Yeah. So on your podcast, you were talking about this. I don't, the comma thing. I don't know who would want the comma thing, but I don't want
Comma's
the comma
out.
thing. Yeah. No matter what, I don't think I would ever want the comma thing. It's just weird.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I don't know. But yeah, I like the either have to be shown in some format, like a tag looking thing,
which
or
is
something
too custom.
like that. Right. Which
Can't
you're
do
not
it.
going to that yet. And then, or then else like multiple selected. I like the idea, I think, that you talked about where like maybe there's some other element you could project them into so that I could show them in a different way somewhere else, above or below.
Right.
Or
That's
access
where
them in some way, even if I can just access them myself some way through some JavaScriptiness or API or whatever you want to do there. On the Livewire side, I guess I could just do on the Livewire side. And
that's also stuff that's really hard to make a nice API for without just making a crazy verbose, very specific thing.
Right.
That's why, like, for now, I think I'm just doing.
I think it's fine to
number 2 selected.
Yeah.
Number 3 selected.
Yeah.
And there's a prop called selected -suffix in the select component, and it's just selected by default and it's localized. But if you want, you can do your own, like you could say items selected.
Right. You could change,
and then you could say industries selected or whatever, and then that'll
I like that.
change that. And if you're in a situation where you can't even customize when it shows up by default. The first item shows the text or the element, just like the single select. The second one shows 2 selected. There's no even prop for you to say always show the count.
Fine for now. I think this is the area you're going to spend a lot of time in, because this is a huge one, right? Like this is
huge,
like
seismic.
I feel like this is like I've bought libraries for this component by itself, right? Like So I do think that this is one where like getting it right is really important to the library and important to it making money, honestly. Continuing, because I just feel like tagging / multi-select, this whole thing is just like really required in a lot of apps, and it sucks. Nobody wants to build it.
Yeah.
The open source ones are often bad, right? It hasn't been maintained. Everybody's using like Select 2, that's like
still
1,000 years old.
Still the king.
Like, so bizarre. Like, I mean, I feel in like
Select
this
2,
where
you literally can't open the drop down with the down arrow, which is like, I was just in there today, like trying to open it with my keyboard, and I was like, this is bizarre. Anyway,
so I think that's a huge thing for you to get right? Like, I wouldn't rush it, but I think you need every single thing we've talked about at some point, right? Like, I think you need all those things.
It's honestly, it's not even the technical side. It's like, how do I expose this in a way that isn't a chart.js config? That doesn't just make you hate everything about this, you know?
But that's why I think if you have the levels, right? It's like there's a basic level, you drop it in, it works nice. There's like then the more advanced level, and then there's like full on custom. You have access to everything, and it's all Yeah, it's gonna be a 200 line thing, but
cliffs are
where you do it.
Those complexity cliffs. That's the art form, and that's the part that's very hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need something out of the box that looks like tags. I think it kind of if you have the full custom option, it's like a nice out, because whatever, this is how you implemented tags. If you don't like it, then here's the one that you can pretty much do anything you want with. Again, there's probably still going to be some limits that are not fully customizable, but you can do a lot with the custom route, where you're still handling all the really dark stuff of making arrows work and all that stuff. But I do think you need all that stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so whatever, I before I thought I'm going to come out with like, it'll be version 1.1 the multi-select version, and it has everything you would need, and it's in there, where I've totally scaled it way back and is like multi-select.
Right.
That says to selected.
You could select multiple things.
Which I found a precedent, which made me feel more confident in this decision when I was working on the custom file uploads. When by default native browser says choose files when it's multiple input type file. When you select one or two, I don't know, I'd have to think about this. Whatever. If you select multiple, it says the number files. Oh, when you select one, it shows the file name. When you select two, it shows the number files selected.
Yeah.
So I thought there's a precedent in the browser for this behavior.
Yeah.
I'm going to just grab that and graft it onto this, because if the browser comes out with a good multi-select, whatever, they might make this same decision.
Right.
You know,
they're never going to do that, but if they did, that would be cool.
Yeah. Well, there is multi-select, but it sucks.
For that one, see, you're stressing about that one, and that one to me is, I'm not too stressed about that. I think that's fine. You made a decision. I'd move on with your life. I think it's good. You know, the tag ones, I think, is to me more critical of like of the thing.
And the tag. So, like, people also would want tags showing outside of the trigger,
right?
You know,
I would think so.
Yeah, which I mean, I have learned that this is how people do it a lot.
Right.
And Hugo turned me on a few of these apps. One of them was called Mobbin, I think, that you just search like some user interface keyword and it'll show you screenshots of apps using that thing. It's really helpful. Yeah. So I just search multi-select and like you see, oh, this is what I have in front of me. This is what you can at least see. This is what people are going to ask me to build. You know.
Right. Yep.
And
I
anyway,
would separate them. I don't know. The thing when you. And I understand why you talk about all these as multi-select, but to me, they're not. Like, I feel like the outsider's not thinking of them as multi-select, and it might be good for you to approach them. Like the docs,
I hear what you're saying.
There should
like
be like
pillbox
tags.
Could be its own thing.
Yeah, like pillbox tags. Like that should be its own docs with its own thing, even though maybe inside itself it's all just multi-select. But like, I don't think people think about it as multi-select. This
is like separating out autocomplete and command palette. They're all under the hood. They're the same thing.
It's the same thing, yeah.
But they're branded differently. You're right. So instead of like variant pillbox and then conforming all the APIs,
I would not do that. Right.
It's like straight up Flux pillbox or something. I hate the word pillbox, but whatever. Let's just say Flux pillbox, and then now I can optimize for those defaults. And I have a whole new canvas to paint on of like supported APIs.
Yeah.
Which feels pretty good. That feels good.
I think that's
I like that.
Yeah.
But that's going to come next. So I'm glad I at least like found a seam here. It's like, okay, I need to ship this because this is like for my own sanity for, you know, and just keep moving. Yeah. Like keep adding things. But yeah, dude, multi-select is so, here's a question.
Yeah.
Right now, everything is rendered server side, all your options. So you can build, I need to add better documentation, but I do have documentation for dynamic options lists that are based on some search query. This is fine. However, every time you query, it's going to make a Livewire request, re-render the list of options, and then morph them into the other options. Then the front end is going to pick it up and it's going to whatever, which feels like a little heavy-handed to me. Because if you have a select deep in a Livewire component, making like a full Livewire component request just to change the options in that select.
Yeah.
But you could extract that into a separate component, but then it's like, then you got to deal with all that communication
like
and
component.
Stuff. Then that's a whole other headache.
Right.
And then there's things that are straight up impossible. Like if you, I think I talked about this on the podcast, virtualized scrolling, where you're just scrolling through 1,000 options, but it's like, you're seeing it as if there's 1,000 options, but it's really virtually showing you a window of like 10 elements that's changing as you scroll.
Right. Okay.
That it's reusing.
Yeah.
So something like that, I think I'm broken in this way because I see things like that and I go, that's the bar. Like we have to do that. Like if we don't do
that's
that,
definitely not the bar.
Our thing's
don't worry
trash,
about that bar.
You know?
Yeah. I wouldn't worry about that bar. But I do know what you mean in terms. Like, so you're saying there's right now with this, there's no, you can't just give it a list. And it's just
that's what I'm getting.
Static. Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm wondering if you I could unlock a lot of things if I generate the options dynamically in Alpine on the front end. And then the interface with the options for you is like you pass in an array of key value pairs.
Right.
And like then the options get generated that way.
Right.
How do you feel about that? Do you prefer that? Like to have some function or method in your library component called options, and it returns a key value pair array, and that's now used by the select, and all the searching happens automatically. You don't even think about it or something.
Well, I mean, I think it's like one of those things where, like, yeah, for a little list where I know it's not a big deal, I'm just gonna like give you an array of stuff, and that's great. Whereas if it's like a big complicated list, then or I have 10 million records and we have to search, right? Because it's
so
like
you could search inside this method, is what I'm saying. Sorry.
okay,
The question is, are you okay losing the styling? You wouldn't be able to style this at all.
I see what you're saying.
I did not propose this. I did not lay out this question well at all, but here it is. We've arrived.
Well, I think again it depends. Like for what you're talking about shipping soon,
Yeah.
which is like basically just a select list, right, with multi-selection. Like I think that's probably fine. Although people aren't going to want different styles. So you're saying like, well, if there's an avatar one, you'll provide an avatar one, but people give you an image and an ID and a piece of text, right?
Like
which is
most
fine.
Custom stuff is like they either want an icon in their option list, or they want an image in the form of an avatar or a flag. Like really, isn't that like most of what people would want? I feel
like that's most of what you see as the examples of in a component library. I don't know if that's really most of what people want. I feel like I've had different sorts of needs where I want to put a bunch of information in there. Like I just said, like I want to put like the number of open help desk tickets they have underneath the person's name, and I also want their image. So now I have like this custom layout thing, right? Like I don't think it's required, but I do think people are going to at some point want it to be custom, and then it might get kind of janky. But then at the same time, maybe it's not. Maybe it's like, could you have like some kind of slot where you pass a template that goes to Alpine, and then Alpine, because it's always the same data, right? It's just like, you give me a template and Alpine can make the custom variations, right? It's just like, okay, here's an array of all the data. Here's a template.
Have to be an Alpine template, and that's where that's like a new thing that
it starts to get weird.
Right now, it's like, well, there's no part of the Flux experience where you need to use Alpine syntax at all.
Right.
And that now would be that. But anyway.
Yeah. Or is it even Alpine? Yeah. But maybe it's not that. Maybe it's like something even simpler, right? It's like : 1 : 2 : 3 : these are
I
gotcha.
Like
I mean, it's like your own little mini template. It's like a tiny template. Yeah. It's like, it's not even a template that has logic from Alpine. It's like literally just tell me where to insert this data. And that's all it does.
So I've been doing this with like toasts, and I actually do this under the hood with the multi-select stuff, but where there's what's driving out like a toast in Flux, actually a template element. And I use slot elements, like native HTML slot elements, for when you're slotting in like the count, or if you're slotting in some information that you don't have. So anyway, this could be, could not be an Alpine template. It could be
expose that in some way. Yeah. I think that would be fine.
Interesting. Yeah. There's a lot of things here, Ian.
It's a lot to it, man. So you took on quite a project here, man. This is a big one.
I know. But I knew that this was like, I've always known that this is kind of the final destination.
Right.
Is like a really hardcore, robust multi-select situation is like, what more could you possibly need in life?
I think you get through this one though. This is a huge one. Like this is like, to me, one of the really key ones. And then there's data table, because that's also the one that's most native to kind of
data table's huge, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I have way more of a right to punt on data table than I do multi-select.
For sure.
Because it's way easier to build your own data table than 1,000 times easier to build your own data table than it is to build your own multi-select,
For sure. And the data table is like going to be one of those things that has like 100 options, but like anybody only needs 3 of them often.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can just like build those 3 things I need and whatever. You've already
there's
given
a good
me
escape
the
hatch
parts,
for it. It's just like, go build your own. Or with multi-select, there's kind of no escape hatch. It's like,
telling them to build their own. It's not
nobody's
really
going to build their
viable.
own.
Yeah. So what's the feedback been? Is people happy with the Flux? How's it going?
Yeah, feedback
customer wise, feedback wise.
Great. And I've been like super on support. And that has been huge because it's keeping it like good and keeping people just feel like it's like really paid attention to and taken care of. But people like it. Yeah, people dig it. I dig it. I look at the discussions for like non-bug feedback, and the things that people want the most among them are datetime text editor. A lot of people saying rich text editor. That's a huge one, which I'm surprised. Like charting, I can't even find I probably got to scroll down pretty far to find people caring a ton about charts. It's like rich text.
Yeah.
Everybody wants rich text.
Well, it is also intertwined with the form. You know, the chart is just a chart. I drop it in some report somewhere, but like the rich text editor is like, I have to drop this into a form. The form's already all nice fluxified, and now I have to like drop this ugly TinyMC thing in here.
Yeah.
It's all janky. So that part is, you know, probably a little bit understandable.
But so I've been addressing most of these feature requests and getting to them. But the biggest feature request, the number one by far, that I have been thinking hard about and talking with Hugo about and trying to figure out, and I can't crack it, is custom colors, brand coloring, like theming for like, you don't want Flux black, you want blue, you know? People want that.
Tricky.
I get it. And that's one where it's like, there's 10,000 ways I could offer that. They all suck in their own ways.
Right.
You know?
It's very tricky. I mean, just look at like Tailwind UI, right? Like I it's like literally the first thing I asked for 7 years ago or whatever it is. Yeah. And
people want that, like you said, that theming thing. I just want to be able to go on Flux and be like, this is my border round, this is my but just color. Like forget about border radiuses.
Right. Just even colors.
And there's a world, Ian, where I offer brand color for your primary button.
Right. Yeah.
But once you pull that thread, okay, well then like it's gonna be weird if that's black, but your checkboxes aren't black and your radios are like blue. It's okay. Well then you did that, but now
your
like active tab. Okay, so you did active tab, but now in the nav bar, I don't want it to be the brand color. So now that shouldn't be the brand. It's like, you know,
there's a lot there,
and you thought it was one color, but it's actually like 5 colors,
of course,
or 10 colors.
The hover state and like all the thing. Yeah. It's I don't have a good one for you there. They definitely want that. They're gonna want that.
Yeah.
But now it's pretty easy to do. Like that, you could publish the components and just edit the CSS. There's no other trickiness there, right? It's just that you have to publish the components, but people don't want to publish the components.
People don't want to publish the components. Yeah. And I could currently, like everywhere in Tailwind, I reference like text zinc 800, which is our primary black. We could like make it custom tail and be like text hyphen bracket var hyphen flux brand comma theme colors zinc 800, and that's a way that we could maintain backwards compatibility and allow you to customize it with like a CSS variable. But whatever. I mean, we could literally talk for hours about how complicated and like annoying this problem is, but I'm more curious to hear just from you in general of like how necessary you think it is, and if there's like, I don't know, anything you have about it.
I do think there is an element of like, if you don't have it, like part of the issue is just that like it becomes that like admin panel thing where like all these Flux apps look the same. Maybe that's like not ideal. People don't want it to just look like the default exactly, you know. If you're not building something, if you're building something for customers and consumers, you have your own stuff you want to do there, but you're trying to like ride that line of like stay within Flux and not like start inventing your own stuff, because that's what you're trying to get out of Flux. But also, if you don't do that somewhat, it's just obviously going to look like everything else. I don't know. I mean, I think brand color would be the obvious, like straightforward thing, but at the same time, isn't that straightforward? And you're really asking people for multiple variations of color, and that could its own
dark mode and light mode for the same brand. Yeah, it's like
it's 10 colors you're asking them for, and that's going to be weird. Or do you just like try to hack it off the one color, which never works out, right? It's always janky. So, yeah, I think it's probably not the thing I'd super take on by default. I mean, I wonder if there's a way to expose
number
all
one
the
requested
colors.
Feature.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of by far.
Can you expose? Can you do it? Can you put all the styles for colors somewhere that's not in the component, where like you could publish just the color palette somewhere, and like so that you don't have to publish. I don't want to publish the components. It's so scary and annoying to publish the components, because I know I'm on the hook for maintaining them forever, and I don't want to be. So like if you could separate the color out from that seems like that would be useful. Yeah, maybe it's just CSS vars. They're all CSS vars. And switch everything to CSS vars, and then that way you can have a override story.
The problem with switching everything to CSS variables is, like, let's just say I straight up hard coded different components. That would still work, because if you published your blade files, they're still going to have the published text zinc 800 in it. They're going to work.
Right.
This is interesting, Ian. Here's what I want to do. To me, the best way to do this is it's a Tailwind config thing. In your Tailwind config, you add, and this is part, I kind of hate this, but it makes a lot of sense to make this part of the install for Flux, is you add this thing, or maybe I guess we merge it by default. I don't know, managing in your Tailwind config makes sense so that in your templates, we can use text-brand. Because if we do that in bg-brand, now when you're using Flux and you have Flux:text and you want to pass a class in to change this to be brand, you're not having to type in some weird hybrid Tailwind thing that references a CSS variable,
Yeah.
That's a big part of that. Like, I could do all this right now and keep it backwards compatible by changing the current templates to use CSS variables.
Right.
But then if you're like passing in bespoke classes, are you going to, is that part of this experience now, is like using these variables, which feels like really unergonomic.
Yeah, it's a little weird if you're not like that up on them, especially too. Like,
right, like most people don't even want to touch CSS variables.
Right. But then just making a custom color scheme in Tailwind, every time I've done that, kind of ends up weird a little bit. Like, it works, but it's a little weird.
What do you mean?
Also, I don't know. I just feel like, because like really, it's like the one color never works. So I have to do like brand, and have like 100, 200, 300, right?
Yep.
Like I'm
Darker,
building
lighter,
a whole color scheme, or
yeah,
or I'm inventing my own lighter, right? All that stuff, and I don't know, that has its own complexity versus just like, hey, here's a place where you like shove in the color value. You can override ours, you can leave ours. But yeah, it's all complicated. Either way, it's complicated to some degree. Like, there's not a way out of it being complicated. I don't think. It does suck that's the number one feature.
It could be I think something I would love to see at this point is like when you do @Flux scripts or something, or just somewhere, you declare a single color, but it's a Tailwind word. So you say like rose.
Right.
And now the brand, instead of being zinc, is rose.
It's
and
rose.
We pick all the colors.
Yeah, you could do that. I like that.
Yeah. And
I don't know if that really works, though.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes like the zinc 700 that was the hover doesn't work as rose 700.
No, that
with the other
we would have full control over it, because
true, I guess
we
like,
could choose.
You go through every color.
Go through every color. Yellow obviously is going to be way different than rose as far as the numbers, way different than zinc.
Gotcha.
When we do that, it'd be a ton of work, but it would be an amazing experience. The only hurdle with this, aside from all the technical ones, is help spot.
Right.
The brand guideline is #1246Q, or whatever. It's like,
yeah, that's a big problem though. That is a big problem that you can't support. Like,
but then there could be an escape hatch that's like, well, under the hood, we actually use CSS variables. And there's 10 of them. And if you want to drop down to that level, you set these.
I think that has to be part of it. Like, at some point, if somebody wants something really custom, there has to just be a place where you set the CSS variables, probably, because you need to set the custom colors.
Yeah.
If you just make it hard coded, I think that's probably the best way. Like, primary is just like, I'm changing primary to be my color scheme, and now it works everywhere like a brand color. Yeah. And if you also get that whole setup right, then you maybe unleash also this whole possibility of people building themes on top of Flux, which is interesting, and people can, you could sell themes, but there could just be themes, and just adds to the whole ecosystem around Flux, which I think would be kind of cool, especially if there's even like background colors. If the whole thing is that, and somebody who's technical enough and designer enough wants to get in there, like, you could do cool custom stuff with it. Yep. It's a lot though. It's a big one.
Everywhere you turn, it's like there's one thing about that scenario that I love, but then there's 10 other things that I hate, and then it's just it doesn't feel easy.
It does feel like you're gonna need something though if it's number one on the requested list. So I guess
need something. I'm thinking like maybe there's a way to just get by right now with when you use Flux. Okay, maybe that's like Flux:button. It could still be variant primary, but there's now like a brand, either like a brand modifier, like it's just a dangling prop called brand that you can add to any component, and it'll turn into a brandified version that you like set the CSS variables for or something. I don't know, but I could see like this is a way where we could free ourselves from a lot of decisions about what gets colored when you're using a brand, by just being like, oh, it's Flux::button primary brand,
I wonder, it's so like, I guess the only question I have about that is like, is it really that simple? Is what people want really that simple, right? Is it really just like, hey, I want my color help spot red, not black, and that's it? Like, this button and the tab and the toggle, like, I want them the red. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Or is
minimum
it that
4
I want the background to be green, and I want my subtler green as the primary, and I want to really style the whole thing.
There's
it's like
color,
that what they want.
There's a hover state, there's like a background state, and then the text color needs to be a little darker to look like the same color as a background color. So it's really kind of like there's like
that's
foreground,
just for like
background
a button thing. I'm saying, what if I want the whole background of like a card? Sure. Like, I don't know, like it can't be the same as the primary, because I want to really design the whole thing. You know what I'm saying?
See. Like it's not just tweaking the colors, but
I guess I could always pass in the classes though. At that point, I'm just passing in the classes everywhere, and it is that's what that is.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a hard thing to think about, because this is another one of those things where, like, I don't want to make Flux a thing that is everything to everyone, and you can use it to make your app look like anything.
Right.
I would like it to make your app look unique and tailored to your brand, but I want us to be able to make like good design decisions for you, and you not to be like to violate them.
I guess I feel like you're gonna hate having a brand argument there, but maybe
I know. But maybe so maybe it's button variant brand, and you configure it somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's probably the lowest hanging fruit, most standard.
Yeah.
Cleanest explanation. Like in the docs, there's like branding, and like it just tells you where to put the stuff, and then stuff pretty magically works wherever you use the brand variant.
Let me ask you this,
like it would make sense.
Is this worth a new major version?
What do you mean?
Because I could make this whole story much better if I was able to break things slightly. Is this worth Flux 2.0 branded? Flux.
You're so early. There's not like there's like
feels like
so much. Well, we got this big production app, and you're breaking it. And it's like I feel like it's not a bad time to break stuff, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a whole gray area, because there's so many things I do that I've only done one thing that people have accused me of breaking Flux. And it is before, when you searched a command palette, it used starts with. Now it uses dot includes. So before, it wasn't like fuzzy at all.
Okay.
When you're searching command palette or searching searchable select or something, it was just strict starts with in JavaScript.
Yeah.
Now it's dot includes.
Okay.
Which is what most people want.
I would think so.
The browser's data set or data list thing defaults to. So I thought, like, the browser does it, we're going to change it, it's okay. But there were a handful of people that were like, this is a breaking change. Modal click the background to close modal. Is that a breaking change?
That you got to do. That's brutal. Got to get that one in there.
It's in there now.
Oh, it's in there. Okay.
But then I got some messages like, well, now there's weird
they
scenarios.
To be able to go between it or something.
Well, they want a prop to at least opt back into.
I can see that.
Which I did add. You can now do : dismissible equals false.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But there's like edge casey things and whatever. Anyway,
on your command palette, I mean, the way the like fancier command palettes work is really with those JavaScript libraries that it's not really just starts with or includes. It's like it's actual fuzzy searching algorithm-y thing, which is kind of cool. But
there's a problem with the fuzzy searching algorithm-y thing. This is why this life is so hard. I researched fuzzy algorithms. I found a good one. I like documented out what I think would be the best all-around fuzzy searching algorithm for Flux. And I think we could build it, and it'd be pretty good, and it would prioritize things and whatever. Exact matches would show up before instead of after, like starts with matches, things like that. Right now, Flux is a server-side generated thing.
All right, yeah, that's right.
So now, to filter a list, we're hiding things just with CSS.
Right.
Now, we just realized, like, way far into this algorithm process that, like, we can't reorder options.
Where are we going to run this thing?
We can't change the option. We can't change the order of options.
Yeah.
That's our hurdle. We could do any algorithmic magic we want, but we cannot make one option appear before the other one without massive amounts of hackery or manipulating the DOM, which will now break when the liveware comes back and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So
I wonder if at some point you're going to end up having to do like some components have an option where they're more front-endy, and I know, you know what I mean? Like this one's just front-endy. You can choose to be front-endy. You can choose for it not to be front-endy, but like these are two totally different components that do the same thing.
Yep.
It does seem to. I don't love that for you right now. Probably kind of muddies the message, and like all that stuff. But at some point I could see when down the road, when you built everything else, it's like, oh, this does come up, and it would be nice if we could do this the more JavaScripty way.
And I think we could disseminate like the two, differentiate the two by like, if you're using the Blade stuff in line, it's just what you would expect it to be.
Right.
They're Blade components.
Yeah.
But if there's like Flux select (options) or something, then you pass in like an options provider or something that's like a Flux backend thing, or somewhere it feels like PHP. It's like that it's providing options or a command palette. It's like a command palette option provider or something.
Yeah, something like
now that's when it's like, okay, we can restrict what you're giving us, or we can't restrict Blade, but we can restrict you down to giving us data. Now we can render that however we want. We can order them however we want. We can virtualize it however we want.
Yeah.
So I could see that being a good path for selects and command palettes to be like, if you want the whole world, you know?
Because that's one of those ones where like React and those things are really giving you something different. Like it's not like that instantaneousness. You actually can sometimes feel that slight differences there and stuff versus going back to the server, whereas a lot of this other stuff is like, whatever, you have to like micro analyze it to like really tell the difference. But like the command palette search is one where like, okay, like you want can that really to be feel that be
raycast
actually instant, versus that slightly less than instant. And command palette also perfect because like probably don't have a million options, even if you have
right now it is
even or whatever.
Like I decided like with Flux, with the searchable stuff by default is instant because like the command palette doesn't go to the server unless you make it go.
Okay.
It does all that was actually a big decision, was like, I'm going to add in front end filtering simply by style display nunning all the options that need to be filtered out. So now, currently the searchable select and the command palette are instant and beautiful.
Okay.
But if you have 1,000 options, you now have 1,000 DOM nodes on a page, and that's a lot of memory, you know? There we go. Welcome, Ian. Welcome. Thank you for
I'm glad you're building
entering the fray with me.
Man, it's all interesting stuff, though. I mean, there's a lot of interesting problems here. There's a lot of stuff to sink your teeth into. So that part is, you're not bored.
I am the opposite of bored. and I truly, the things I don't like about it are like the monotony and not being able to make breaking changes and being restricted from making the things I want.
That's always hard,
and maintaining whatever. Deep diving bugs. But this stuff is my favorite. It's like, yes.
You got to get some help in there. We've talked about this off air, but at some point you need some help, man.
This is the other podcast to record, is like, I'm thinking a lot about it. I have so many, I think, limiting beliefs and just things that make this really hard for me that I need to fix. So yes, I do need help. I don't know how to get it, and I don't know how to maintain it. So
well, everybody has those challenges, you know. You're just no different than every other business out there. It's hard to hire people. You don't necessarily trust them at first. You got to build that trust.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
I think this is what I'm learning, is like, I view myself as like a certain level of expert, I guess. But there's actually this massive gap where like technology is here, but business, especially this kind of stuff, is like a toddler. Like,
just getting rolling with that. Yeah.
And it doesn't always compute that like, wait, you actually know nothing about this, and you need to build up your knowledge from the ground up. And
I think it's hard for you too, because like you have a kind of unique situation where you have had a lot of success and you've had good financial success, and you've been able to do that just totally by yourself and not even with like that much stress around it, is my impression of like not an overwhelming amount of work.
For Flux season. All of Flux and launch and Laracon.
Forget Flux.
Yes,
I'm saying
everything
pre-Flux,
else manageable.
Like, when most of your money was coming from like GitHub support or like the screencasts, or like, there's stress around like you have to produce these things, but like you are one person, you can produce screencasts. That is reasonable. You are doing it. It's fine. And so like now you've had 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it's been. You've been financially doing decent to very well along the path there. But it's just you, and that starts to bake in like those things you're talking about that are like kind of locked into you. You built up bad habits because you didn't need to have different habits. And then now that you have more of a real, like a full-on software product that needs just somebody to answer what the pricing is, and like all this type of random stuff, and then maintenance and stuff, that you can't do all that on your own without sacrificing other things and like how
Right.
fast the product moves forward and all that stuff. So
yeah, it's true. That's a good way of looking at it. Also, that just like I'm so used to this specific way of like all of that history has contributed to bad habits, limiting beliefs. Like nobody, like how could I bring anybody in?
Nobody else could do
How
it.
are they
right?
going to do this? How are they going to debug like 10 stacks deep of 4 repositories and like without 4 years of training? It's like, so there's all these kind of things around that that make it really hard for me. But yeah, you're right. Having that much time of just like, but that I guess that's where like business wise, there's some things that I'm either naturally good at or have gotten okay at, like marketing and like branding and stuff like that, and like communication. It's like, I guess what to narrow it down, it's like management, HR, delegation, those things that I didn't know were incredibly important, but obviously like you just hit this brick wall of scale unless you solve these problems. And I have almost no idea how to solve them. Or like, you know, it's
all that information's out there though. It's not, you can do it. You're gonna do it. It's gonna be fine. I mean, just think about it this way: like 35 Fighter has some like 200 million lines of code or something insane, right? And like every day they bring new people onto that project in some fashion. And there's a thing that's gonna fly and shoot missiles and be invisible to radar and all this stuff. And people figure out day one like how to get in there and start coding, and like it takes time and whatever, but like so it's possible. It's possible.
It's possible
with the right motivation and the right people. It's possible that they could figure it out, but it does feel like they're not going to be able to. I do have that myself, just with HelpSpot being old. It's like it's old application, there's old PHP concepts in there that nobody would ever do today, all that stuff. And it's like, okay, I'm hiring a modern Laravel developer to work on this old project. They're not going to understand like how this works and all that stuff.
And they're not going to like their job. They're going to leave you for like a green field. Like
they're not. I want to go build the cool.
Those are all the things
that I Nightwatch, right? Like,
exactly.
I want to go I don't want to build work on HelpSpot.
And if they're hiring everybody, like these are part of the limiting beliefs that I have of like, why would anybody sufficiently like skilled enough to work on this thing not be already working at Laravel? You know, like.
But the thing is, you got to realize you put a job out there and you're going to have 1,500 applicants. So like they're not all working at Laravel, right? And there's lots of good people, and not that all 1,500 are going to be people you'd want to hire, but you only need to find one or two or whatever. And so they're out there, they're doing things way worse than you're going to have them do. That's the other thing you always got to remember. Like when you're just a programmer, some corporate cog somewhere or some terrible little thing, like that's not all the jobs aren't bad, but a lot of them are bad. And it's like, I can be all this open source stuff and work with Caleb directly, and like it's gonna be great. It's gonna be so much fun. Like the same with like HelpSpot. It's like, this is sucky, this old PHP part, but there's other newer stuff I work on. It's fun refactoring old stuff at times. You know, it's like a cool little side quest. And so it's in the end. But I do have those fears too. Definitely comes up, but you gotta push through. You got power through.
But those are the things. Well, it's good to hear that I'm not alone in them. But that's why I specifically call them out as limiting beliefs, because just factually they limit me. They're the things that stop me from thinking that this will work.
From growing
and I'm not saying they're limiting myths. They are beliefs, that could be true or false. But I messaged you about the one failure that I had with hiring, which in summary is like, this person didn't want, like was close to doing the job and then didn't want to at sort of the end, because it was both like not well like laid out enough. Like the role wasn't designed.
Defined.
It wasn't defined. Exactly. It wasn't a role. It was just like, come help me.
Right.
And then the other part of it is that the work is just not something a lot of developers want to do. Some of that work, the maintenance-y stuff. So you don't want to just be crushing tickets all day. If you don't want to be a ticket crusher, a GitHub issue crusher, and you want to be like greenfield apping stuff, like this isn't the role for you. So it's like those two things totally deflated me and have like contributed to some of these beliefs that like I'm not at least easily going to find. This isn't like an attractive thing. And then the other thing that happened with somebody that went sort of south was, again, the like not being able to define a role. I have such a hard time telling you what to do. And the other part of it was, I don't want to work with people that much and talk with people that much. I want to like save time and not add more like communication time. And a lot of people want like teamwork and reviews and all that stuff. And I probably need to do all that stuff. But out of the gate, I was just like, basically don't want to talk to you ever, you know? Like, that will just take more work.
Yeah.
And I don't want more work. I want less work, you know?
Yeah.
But people want meetings and they want to talk. They want to like pair on something or grow from you and things. And it's like, at least at that point, my pitch is like you could be, you know, you could not even be able to talk. I don't know. We basically never need to talk, you know? Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing with those things is like, you absolutely have to define. I mean, we talked about this offline a little bit, and I sent you some examples of like defining a job. You got to do that, even if you don't have it all perfect. But this way, you want to filter for yourself. You need to filter out the people who don't want to ever crush tickets, because you need somebody who crushes tickets, right?
That's what you do in the role definition,
right?
Yeah.
And so, like this way, those people don't even waste your time, and you can be down to people who are like, who see the opportunity of like 30 or 40% of the time, I'm working on really cool, interesting stuff, and I'm okay that 30, 40% of the time, it's like, it's more monotonous type stuff. And this is like, the other thing we forget as founders and entrepreneurs is that that's totally normal. That's every job in the world. And most people in a normal job would be like, 40% of the time I get to work on cool stuff. Like normally it's like 3% of a year I work on cool stuff, and 97% is bullshit, right?
Yeah.
So we don't think of it that way, because we're like, well, we just work on whatever we want. So we work on cool stuff a high percentage of the time. So you got to just remember that too, they're not becoming founders of the company. They're becoming, you know, an employee, and that this job is way better than the job they're leaving, where they spend 2% of their year on cool stuff. Yeah. I mean, definitely definition's a huge one. And like, not talking to people. I mean, I don't talk a lot to my employees. I mean, it's like, you got to find the right culture fit, but it's like, we're in Slack and we do one-on-one calls every week, and it's like 30 minutes to an hour.
How often are you talking, engaging with people in your company in Slack or really any medium?
I mean, it's always like in the morning we'll do some engagement. Then like throughout the day, there'll be questions for me or stuff that comes up here and there. You know, some days more than others, but not a ton. There's definitely days where we don't have a ton of interaction, or at least not me to people necessarily. Like sometimes I have more than one employee, so they're interacting amongst each other sometimes, you know, for various reasons. But and then the weekly calls, which we've actually just shifted those to be every other week, and then we have this kind of like product meeting on the alternate weeks. That's like a couple hours, like about HelpSpot, and we kind of just are all together, because a lot of times the one-on-one was ending up being like, I'm just passing messages between everybody about stuff we're talking about HelpSpot. So it's like, well, let's just have a call that's about HelpSpot one week, and a call that's one-on-one, just where we can just talk about whatever the other week. So it evolves, but you know, that's not that
so
much.
It's like pretty light.
Yeah, pretty light.
Like you're not a meeting heavy company. You're not a
no.
But even some of the maybe it's like morning for me, is a lot of the things a big portion of the things I loved about leaving a company and not having a real job, I will actually lose, because I'll create the company.
Right.
But Slack, I don't have Slack. I never open Slack. And I don't talk with anybody, and I kind of love that. I love not saying hi in the morning, and not like shooting the breeze and wasting a bunch of random time all day, and like saying something that's like stresses you out a little bit, or you know, and like adds it's nice to just fly freely. And you know,
the trade-offs though.
Anyway,
you want more money?
So I think that's another realization, is like, I do have to come to grips with like getting a job again. You know,
I think some of that stuff though is like, you can build whatever you want, right? Like if you find the right person who doesn't need too much oversight, maybe they're even in a weird time zone, like find someone in Eastern Europe, right? And then it's like, well, we're not even overlapping. We only overlap for 2 hours a day. And so that's its own like way of, there's just like less of that interaction. Subtle pressure, you know? So there are some things like that.
2 random thoughts. What I would love if I had like more money would be to hire somebody to be the boss of all this.
Yeah, that's
it's like,
nice.
You're the person, you do the one-on-ones, you do the manage, you talk in Slack. Like I don't even have Slack. Like you know, that to me seems like a really ideal setup.
Yeah. You're the visionary leader.
Yeah. But so I don't know that, so I don't have to do one-on-ones and like care for like people's like well-being, you know,
right?
Which I'm capable of these things, and I could get into that mode, but it would restrict other areas of my life.
Yeah, it is a change for sure.
Yeah,
but you gotta just balance it out with this like stuff you hate doing now, and if you like these things you're trading off, or like that's like a couple hours less freedom in some ways, but at the same time, like right now, maybe you have 10 hours of things you like hate doing. So now if you're down to 0 hours of things you hate doing and you're still up 8 hours, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that kind of
Yep.
trade-off.
Right. You
Yeah.
eat some in one department, you get to not have to do all the stuff that they're doing that you don't want to do. Yeah.
That's the upside.
One random other bonus thing, Ian,
Mm.
is I historically, more lately than in the past, but historically, when I'm working with people, I shout them out and they look good because they are good and I'm excited. I talk about the people I'm excited
Yeah.
about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I surface them and a lot of people want them. And I think it has already happened to me, and this will be harder in the future, much harder, is like I feel like I will lose everybody I hire if I don't make my job, both the role and the vibes and everything about it satisfactory wise, and then money and benefits, if I don't make that something that they will want to stay with against the likes of companies, obscure companies that will pay them a ton of money, and then companies that will pay them comparable money but surface them on a much bigger scale, like Laravel or something.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, this has happened with people in recent history that's like,
Yeah.
just like, oh, this guy's great, I've been working with him, whatever. And it's like, we're getting there. And then it's like I got an email from somebody telling me they're so grateful that I like highlighted this person because it put them on the radar and they hired them, whatever. But I was trying to hire them. And I didn't get to because this person did. And if I never spoke up and this person was in obscurity, I'd probably I'd be working with them.
I think that's the wrong takeaway a little bit, because the reality is you didn't hire them when you could have hired them. Potentially. I don't know if that's totally true in this case, but the point is you haven't had any full-time employees.
It's half true. But yes.
If they, you know what I mean? Like if they were already your full-time employee.
Right. Would they have left for that offer?
Right.
Maybe
it's
not.
Different.
Yeah.
Right. Are they even looking for a job? They just joined you 6 months ago. Are they like in that mindset of like, I'm going to jump to some other job? Like some people are, but it's not as common. Right. So like, whereas like if you're contracting with people, it's like they're always looking for other jobs because they don't owe you anything. Like that's just the arrangement, right? Like there's no sort of, you're not guaranteeing them anything and they're not guaranteeing you anything, right? That's the deal. So yeah, you could always lose people. I mean, it's definitely a thing. I think there's, again, like if you define the job right and like when you interview and stuff like that, it's like you're kind of, some people want to be internet famous. Some people want to be in the mix on the latest thing that's happening, but that's not true of a lot of people. Like a lot of people aren't looking for that as like a primary goal of their employment. And so that you got to suss out what this person's up to and see if it's going to be a fit. Yeah. And I've had pretty good luck with that stuff for the most part, but it's definitely
you have a very
possible.
Interesting history, obviously. In some ways, the people who work for you are obscure, but in other ways, they're the most surfaced people in our realm.
They become surface. Some of them have become surface.
Some of them are the definition of surface, and other ones are, I couldn't name people at your company besides the big ones,
Right. Yeah. I think that's because people have different levels. They don't necessarily want to be, we again are like, oh, you're on Twitter, you're on whatever, right? And you're in there and you're talking about the latest thing and you're like, but like not everybody wants to do that, right? Like they want to just go after work. And like the one guy works for me who's on social media, Matt, but he still is like every day after work, he's like going skiing and he's like mountain biking. He's like he's not like hanging around on the internet like
Matt,
we do.
I'm seeing him online actually, so he's hanging out
more.
He's
been doing a little bit more. Yeah, he's been doing a little more. But I mean, he's also worked here
Blue
10
Sky,
years,
I think.
He's on Blue Sky, and I just think it's like I don't think the right thing to take away is not to highlight the people. I think it's good to highlight them.
I think the takeaway is I have to make the takeaway for me has never been I don't highlight the people. It's been I need to make the job and the engagement attractive enough that they wouldn't think twice. Why would they want to leave? They love this.
People
leave.
The whole thing. That's the thing. Like, wait, after this person, if you hire somebody and they last 18 months and then they leave, right?
That'd be fine. Yeah.
Because you now have already set up the structure, right, for what this job is. And now you're going to just hire the next person and put them in that structure. And so like, it's different than this first jump, which is like, you don't have any structure. You don't even know how to hire somebody. What's the legal stuff? What's the accounting stuff? Right? There's all this other stuff. Right. But like, there's how much you want to interact and all those things. Like the second employee is way easier because you like already have all this structure of the baseline business structure. You already know how you like to interact or don't like to interact. So, not that especially if you like the person, you really don't want to leave them, but them to leave. But like at the same time, you can hire somebody else to do that job most likely. So it gets easier, but it's also, I mean, I've been really lucky. I love everybody who works here, and it's like been really good. People have all stayed like a good amount of time. And when they left, it was time for them to leave. Like pretty much everybody who's left was like, we were all on the same page that like, you've like outgrown it here. Like, it doesn't make any sense for you to work here anymore, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think you'll figure it out. You just got to get in there. You got to get in there and do it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Gotta make it happen.
Does it matter what time of year? Like should I like work on a job posting and a position and then wait till like the new year to really go for it, like posting?
No. Well, first of all, I don't think it matters that much, but I think this is a good time of year. I think people are like, new year, new job, new me. I'm out there looking. This is the time. Like, I think this is a good time to hire.
Okay.
Actually,
the only reason I thought that is A, they're about to get vacation time at their current place, whatever, which they would get here, but B, they get year-end bonuses and they don't want to leave before them.
Yeah, but by the time it's already mid-November, like by the time you actually like produce this job thing and put it out there and collect resumes, they're going to give 2 to 4 weeks notice, right? Like whatever. It's all, as long as you're flexible, because you don't have anybody right now. So you're not like, oh, you got to start tomorrow. So it's like, right. If they're like, listen, I got to wait till like January 1st to get my bonus or whatever, you're not going to care, right? Like, no. So I think that's all fine. Like, I mean, listen, if they're like, I got to wait till March, then yeah, they're going to be like, no, I got to get somebody before March. But if it's like January 1st or something, fine, who cares?
Here's a random idea, Ian, you're going to have to just kick us off here, but
it's all there.
Random idea that I had. Like, I keep wanting to do things differently. And historically, this is like a lot of what I take away from you with conversations like this is like, follow the carved path. Like, it's good. Like, don't get clever with things, because, but for some reason, I just always have this tendency to not believe or not be excited about something unless it's like remixed and exciting in my brain.
You're inventing it.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of those small inventions, which is hilarious to call it this, is like, what if this would remove a lot of my limiting beliefs. What if I hired a junior developer? What if I made that my first hire?
So you can mold them.
Yeah. Somebody who can't go work at a Laravel or can't, but like the requirement for the job is like, because I think there's a lot of people like this. It's like, I don't really care how good you are at Laravel. I mean, I care, whatever, that some amount.
Right.
But I care that like you were really awesome at something else, like I just need to see that you were really awesome at anything. It doesn't matter what. You could have been a concert pianist. Great. Come work for me. I'll teach you the rest. But you already have the piece that is rare, and I'll get you at like a bargain that's good for both of us.
Yeah.
At the cost of having to train you and whatever. But like, could that be a way that's like you widen the amount of people who are potentially killer people, and there's like nobody hiring juniors right now. Like, I don't know.
I think it cuts both ways. I mean, I think my concern would be that you kind of need help pretty soon, and you've already been a little bit like, I don't really want to do a lot of interacting, and this would be the opposite of both those things.
Contradiction here.
So like, this is like high level of interaction, right? Because you're training them, and high delay in terms of their effectiveness of actually offloading stuff off of you.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think you're gonna want to hire like the most senior of senior people either. That's probably not the right play for what you're looking for. But I think you probably want somebody a little farther in who can be on their own a little more. It would be my default take. Now, again, if you have this different, I mean, Joel Spolsky, who did Fog Creek Software and Trello and Stack Overflow, right? So it's very famous things. He's all these software things. And one of the things he did was he would hire interns over the summer and like pay them a bunch of money and all this stuff. And then he would have 10 of them, and then he would keep the best 1 or 2 and train them up.
That's
from there.
Pretty sick.
So it was a good idea. This is how he like undercut the big guys, because he'd be like, he got to them earlier before they went to Microsoft or whatever. So that kind of idea I think could be interesting. But again, he at that point already had like, he was the manager. He had other software. There was already other professional software developers. Like, I don't know about for your very first one, if that's ideal, I guess, I think that's where I'd be a little concerned. But like, if you hire someone and that works out, and then next summer you have an intern and you're kind of getting ready to hire somebody else, and maybe that becomes the person you hire eventually, or they work part-time, or like,
right.
or junior, just like what you're saying, somebody who could start full-time but is junior, and you're going to train them up with the other person helping you train them up. So it's not like just you training them up, but you have,
and it would be good
else
to see. Well, I mean, that's why I guess the qualifier, the like really awesome at something else, I think does weed out a lot of my fears. My fears would be, I've worked with juniors, like ish people in the past, that it's just like, and I've seen employers regret these juniors who never make it out of junior. You know, it's like a common thing. Juniors that don't make it out of junior. But then they're like, my brother-in-law switched careers from being a football coach, and he's just like a math head, physics head, smart guy, strategy guy. And he switched to programming, and like in he's just blasting through like all the levels. And it's like, he would have been such a good hire. You know, like somebody like that is like, oh man, give me the career convert who's like already all got the pedigree in football coaching. And then like, let's just do this here. And, you know,
I would say you're upping the difficulty level on yourself quite a bit, because it's like,
sure, because you already have to be like, but I feel like so many people in my circles are programming converts. They're not that great at programming, but like one of my closest friends, concert violist, still is in like the Atlanta Orchestra, does it on the side and whatever. And he switched over to programming. And, you know, if you've done that, like you're special, but you kind of suck at programming. You know, it's like, it just seems like a common enough thing. All these COVID people switched. Now there's no jobs. They all need jobs, and they don't have the skills. I don't know.
The other thing is that, like, when you take somebody who has had a job doing what you need them to do roughly, then you can know roughly if they're going to be able to do the job you need them to do, right? It doesn't always work. But whereas if they were a concert pianist, like, yes, they are capable of working hard on things, but ultimately they just might not be able to do the things you need them to do. And your stuff's pretty complicated as far in terms of web development levels of complexity. I would say yours is towards the higher end of complexity,
which is another limiting
wire and
belief.
All that.
That's like, this is like the hardest stuff.
Right. I don't think it's the hardest stuff, but I think in terms of you being like,
or the most,
I
like,
want somebody to come in here and
make
an impact, right? Like, it's, if you want somebody who can come in and make an impact quickly, that's the opposite of like train them from nothing. At the same time, train them from nothing can be appealing. I just think it's going to take a lot of your time.
No, it's dumb. It shouldn't be done. But for some reason, I'm way more attracted to like weird ideas. Like you're
looking to delay yourself. You want to have a reason.
You think that's it? Like
to not hire the person you need to hire. Yeah,
I think it's really. I just feel like that's another limiting thing that you're talking about. Is like, I feel like just the sheer amount of like web API knowledge that I have that allows me to like solve one of these tickets in like a day or an hour or something. It's going to take somebody else like a month or a week. I don't know. It's just like, oh,
but that's why you're worth $1 million a year. Let's say your value as a programmer is $1 million a year, right? Let's just say it's true. You're not paying whoever you're paying $1 million a year, right? So like the expectation isn't that they're going to do $1 million a year salary level work, because that's not what you're paying them, right? So you're paying somebody who's not the absolute top of their PHP land, right? You're paying somebody who's more mid-career.
That's why they make less money,
right? Yeah, they make less money, and they do stuff slower. And that's fine.
Right. That's another, that book, the Buy Back Your Time book. Did you read the Mark or whoever?
I didn't read it, but we talked about
it. One of the things I liked in there that was like very specific is like, first you evaluate what your buyback rate is. So you basically take your rate. So let's say it's $1 million, and then you quarter it. So your buyback rate is $250,000 a year, but you figure it out hourly or whatever. That's the amount of money that you just shouldn't even think about. But spend that money, that quarter of your time, to buy back your time. And then there's also a bit in there about like, you're not going to find the common myth that I have of like, nobody's going to do it as good as me. You just settle that nobody will do it as good as you, because it's all the specific knowledge, and you settle for like, I think 75 or 80% what you sort of deem as that. And like, then you make sure that that's good enough for you, so that you don't end up in that trap.
Also, there's sort of this whole fake thing. Like, to me, it's like there's going to be parts of the job the person's doing where they're directly replacing what you do. And so that there is that direct comparison. Like, okay, they're doing it slower than you would do it. They're maybe not doing it quite as well as you would do it, right? But there's so many things right now that just aren't getting done at all. And so compared to the things that aren't getting done at all, right?
They're doing much better.
They're doing so much better than you would ever do it. Because right now you are not doing it. It is undone.
And
So the
parts,
thing
I mean,
that
I'm
should
not
be
the best
done,
at tons of stuff. Like there's
right? There's just other things they're going to be
tons of
better at.
things
But even
that,
forget about that. There's just
yeah,
things that you would be great at if you had the time to do them.
yeah,
But you don't, or either you don't want to,
yeah.
or you just don't have time to do it. And either way, they're not getting done. And so them doing it is already way better than quote unquote you doing it, because you're not doing it. And so it's not getting done. And that's
This
hurting
is the same
business.
problem we keep coming across with components, where it's like, is it better to not build the component, or to
Right.
build a small version of the component, or a poorly built version of the component? I have the same calculus. It's the same hesitations with people. It's like, well, if I'm not doing it, nobody's saying he did it poorly.
Right.
Nobody's saying that
That's true.
Wireable LLC sucks at X. They're just saying he doesn't do X.
Yeah.
Where now you have that thing, and then it's like, you know, where it's
But
like,
sometimes doesn't do X means I can't buy your thing because it doesn't do X, and I'd rather have the 80% version of it.
Right, but it does cheapen. You know what I'm saying? The factor of cheapening. I'm of course, these are like totally broad strokes.
I think it's like, additive. It's not cheapening. It's additive. It's something that was undone,
right?
And now is done.
You know what additive can do to a brand.
Yeah, you're
or
not
to
there
a product.
Yet, you know, you're not. You're still in the like. There's so many things you need to build. You're like underwater. You're not like, oh man, we did everything, and now we're just adding useless crap on top, and it's not as good. And like, you have tons of stuff you need to build.
Yeah.
To some degree, you know what I mean? Like, if you want it to be the full thing, the vision, I think, you know,
tons of stuff, kind of, but kind of not. Also, like, besides chart, hit me though. Charting, WYSIWYG, or come back to Flux. I'm going to take another 3 hours. Charting, WYSIWYG, okay, charting, WYSIWYG, data table. But like, think about ShadCN. There's no data table situation in ShadCN.
Yeah,
they're like, the things that they have that we don't is like charting and a bunch of odds and ends. But there's things like, okay, yeah, we got to add a range slider. Sure, that's going to take me a week or something.
Right.
It's the date picker, but you know,
I don't know.
I don't think we're that far from like.
I'm on the like prime view, and like there's a lot of components here. There's a lot of components here, and then when you go into them, there's like, you know, there's like subcomponents and like different sorts of like you know, complexity around them, the things you can add, and variants.
A ton that they have that we don't have. There's stuff like, so skeleton, we don't have a skeleton component, but that's like, you know, there's one example, didn't take that much time, but they're like fundamental things there's not a ton of. Ian, just saying. Slider, sheet, there is like nope, we got that too. A lot of these are called different things.
Some of these I don't know if you need, right? Like, but
so like sheet
editor, they have an editor, they have data table.
Editor. What do we got?
They have charts.
So what is data table though?
They have a whole bunch of different types of data tables. Like, you know what I mean? There's like data view.
Okay, so data table is this is the problem with
ordered
lists and all these other ones.
Is
like
a huge thing we use in HelpSpot actually, which nobody ever has. Is the
what did you call
lists. The ordered lists. It's called ordered lists.
What are we looking at? You're looking at something else.
I'm looking at primeview.org.
I'm so sorry. I thought we were talking about ShadCN.
No, I was talking about PrimeView.
Oh, there are component libraries that have, yeah, absolutely. What's primeview.org? Boost your online presence? That can't be it.
I don't think Shad is the best comparison for you, because React is such a huge ecosystem that people can just pull in other stuff so easily. So, okay, Shad doesn't have all this stuff. Who cares? There's 17 other React things that do it, and I just pull it in. Like, that's not true of Flux, right? There's not those other things I can pull in. So that's where Flux
is more
needs
like
to be more full featured.
Oh, what Mantine? No, that's also another React thing. But there's like the other, like the Blazor and .NET type ecosystem, like a lot of those, like in the Java and Spring, like,
and they have tons of components. Always those things always have millions of components.
Yeah, and they're huge companies that.
Yeah, they're huge companies.
They're massive, and like it's unbelievable. They're like bigger than Laravel, I bet. Like in just like
probably
sheer size of their company.
Form. Yeah.
But yeah, they have spreadsheet, literally a spreadsheet component. You want to make a spreadsheet?
Right. Like a multi-person, real-time spreadsheet thing. Yes. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you need every one of these things. Right? I'm not saying you do need every one of them, but I think there's like the baseline, yes, to even make it worth people buying level. But then there's I think there's plenty. People are going to want more stuff over time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of components out there, and there's not a lot of Livewire, Laravel, Bladey, just things out there as alternatives. So
Yep.
that's the thing. Whereas Shad can depend on that because they're like, okay, we don't have an awesome data table. Well, there's like 7 React data tables. Pick whichever one you want.
The Shad is perfectly positioned for this. Is no shade on Shad. This is what makes it so awesome. But you go to data table in Shad CN, and it's just like it's a bunch of code that you copy and paste. It's just importing from TanStack / React table, which is the same thing as like Sonar, whatever for Toast. It's like they're just literally in the file. Import Toast from Sonar or Sonar, whatever. There's nothing. Shad didn't do anything with this. It's literally just copy and pasting another library. And so there's so many of these that are like that.
Yep.
I'm sure Date Picker is the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I think you could do that. I don't think it's bad for you to even do that where you can, but it's just like your stuff's not quite so straightforward because there's the backend element to it and all that stuff that kind of has to work.
Yeah, true.
I don't know.
Right.
Some places you can, some
places
you can't,
I could. And if I open up that world, like anyway. Yeah. Let me ask you this, Ian. Well,
let's do it.
Should I theoretically kill, not like actually, but just should all aspects of the Caleb Porzio business be funneled into Flux? All resources and all things like, let's say, like, should I stop charging for screencasts, open all that up, kill all that revenue, put energy into like YouTube and free stuff and whatever, and the whole thing is just funneling people into Flux, the one paid thing, and that's the big play.
I don't love the idea of giving up all that revenue. I do like the idea of over time, like transitioning to like when you're doing a lot of screencasts and live streams and stuff to build up the Flux brand more. Because I feel like you haven't had a lot of time to do that. And so it's kind of fallen off the radar in that way a little bit. Like, but I don't know if I'd kill that revenue yet. I think I would still sell the screencasts and they're still valuable and all that. But see, this is where like, what is your value? This is like starts to get really interesting about hiring too. Like, the hardest thing for you to replace and the most value you bring is in marketing. Like clearly, definitely. Like you could not hire a marketer to do what you can do marketing. You can 100% hire a developer to do what you're developing. Now, maybe they're more expensive. Maybe you need 2 people. Maybe it's going to always take them longer than you could do it. But at the end of the day, you could find people who could program the things you're programming. You can't find somebody to market Flux the way you can market Flux. So you're actually, again, the more you can have other people doing the development, the more time you'll have to do YouTube and screencasts and get the word out so that you can sell more Flux. Like that's the thing. That's the thing that's really hard to replace. Because if you hire somebody, even, all this modern marketing is very tricky. Like, I mean, even with Aaron, right? Like you hire Aaron, but then Aaron gets internet famous and they laid him off. But at the end of the day, do I think Aaron was going to work at, Plan Scale for 10 years? No, I don't think Aaron was going to work there for 10 years, right? Because there's going to be too much opportunity, right? Yeah,
right. Like if you hire somebody who's that good and bootstrappy and like market, whatever, like they're either doing their own thing or they're headed there quickly.
Yeah, it's hard to get those people with those skills. And like, so I think that's where like dollar for dollar, you're going to make the most dollars if you could just be out there talking about Flux all the time. Like that's how you are going to make the most money. But how do you do that? Well, it's hard to do that when you're deep in code. There is some overlap there, right? Like when you live, when you stream, you fixing something or building something.
Yeah, that is a win-win.
People are interested in that, right? Yeah. So that's definitely useful too. But
so much of the, what I need to do is build like a starter kit or something, because like so much of the streaming stuff I actually do is just so like weedy that like
reading weird
so many people drop off. People come in here and they just want to talk about other stuff because they're like, what are we even doing here? And it's like, hold on, guys, let me just silently think about this for 20 minutes.
Adam used to do those things where it's like, I'm just going to build the thing, or I'm copying some existing stuff. Like you can do something awesome. Like that. Like I'm just going to copy this thing in Flux. Like
let's just mirror another. Let's build. I'm going to build
Twitter in Flux, right? And I'm just going to like go through and use the components and show you how you do it and whatever. All that stuff.
Kind of stuff would be fun, and I would love to do that. And it would be great marketing. And we got to hire some people.
I know.
What I want to do is hire somebody to do the hiring, because I don't feel like I have the time or I'm qualified.
I mean, there's a whole other thing. I don't want to get. Well, we're almost at 3 hours here, but like. I mean, you could sell part of the business to somebody who's businessy, and they could do businessy stuff, right? There are all these other things we don't ever talk about because it's like we're bootstrappers and it's like we just do it ourselves and whatever. But like in the real business world, people do stuff like this all the time. Like, I sold 30% of the company to this businessy guy who's now going to do all the businessy stuff and whatever. Like these things are possible. It's like,
well, people do. I mean,
tricky,
like Aaron brought on Steve and stuff. That stuff happens. But
well, they're co-founders though, so it's a little different.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because somebody you can't just you can't really bring on a co-founder so easily because like they're going to get part of the money, so they're not going to now pay you to be involved. That's kind of weird, but you could do a small amount, I guess.
Yep.
But then it gets tricky. It gets tricky.
Yeah. It's all tricky.
But I don't think you need to do that. I think you can do it. You're capable of doing it.
I can do it. I just have to learn how to structure a job. That's it.
You just start there. You get a good job ad.
Learn how to structure
some hiring.
the role.
Get some hiring underneath. You know what they need to do. You just got to write it up.
I don't. I mean,
you do know.
I've tried to do this.
Ticket crushing.
Ticket crushing.
Very definable thing.
Be my ticket crusher. Yes.
Very definable.
That's the role.
And maintain the open source repos, bugs in the open source repos. Very definable role.
Yeah.
Bug fixing existing Flux components. It's a very definable role. There you go. That's like more than a full-time amount of work right there in those three things.
Yeah. Okay, Ian, let's do it.
Do it.
One of my fun ideas that, because I think subconsciously, like you're saying, I'm just trying to not do this. It's like, what if I made it so that similar to Junior thing, is like I only hired local people in my village and bought a little space that I can walk to. And it's like my company is now just in my village, and now I have all the life improvements of having like humans and stuff.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That like go to your
should try that.
Kids like parties and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I would have everybody work here if it was reasonable to do that. If I could have pulled it off. I don't think I could have pulled it off, but especially like you're like around Buffalo. It's like a more real area. I just don't think I could have made it work. But
okay. But it's like a precedent,
I think that'd be awesome.
If I don't like set it, it's like this is the time to set it if I'm gonna set it. It's like
this is the time.
It's
for
not
sure.
easy to back away from. Remote.
Yeah. I mean, you could write up. You still need a job ad, right? So you could go write up the job and like then just do it. Go to like the local PHP meetup, put it in like whatever little regional job things, and like if there's a tech meetup or whatever, like I think that would be a cool thing to attempt and see how it goes.
Right?
Why not?
Be interesting.
That's you being around way more people. You started with I don't want to talk to anybody ever, or they're in an office with you every day, all the time. One of those two things.
I'm diverted, like like I do not like come off as an introvert because I'm half of that. So part of me is like very attracted to that, but also not. I don't know. Yeah.
Being in person has some huge advantages in terms of like a lot of the stuff we've talked about, which is like you can convey knowledge and information, but less formalized. Like there doesn't have to always be a standing meeting. It's like they could just turn around and be like, hey, Caleb, how does this thing work? And you could be like, okay, hey, that's how that thing works. And it's more natural than like, let's type it all out, or obviously let's get on Zoom or all those type of things. So I think there are some big advantages to that for sure.
The community engagement part is really interesting to me. It's like, because currently I would completely lack that at any size of business, but being able to like, like we're going to sponsor the 5K here, or whatever. And like, we're all going to run it or something, or stuff like that. Is like, it would enrich my life outside of work in ways that right now there, there's this internet hole where it's like, you're just this internet guy.
Right.
And then you don't get a lot of the benefits of like owning a company in your real life,
Yeah. Once a year, you see the people from the internet at Laracon, and then that's a cool 2 days, and then that's over.
Yeah. You don't know their families. You don't, you're not like, we're going to go to this little, I don't know. There's no field trips.
This might also satisfy your, you have to you're inventing people working in an office together, right? Like
it's an invention.
Nobody else
complete
has done
innovation.
That recently,
this is new.
And now you are inventing it.
This is new.
Yeah, and you can still work from home. They can still work from home. Maybe you have some hey, 2 or 3 days a week we're in some office, or maybe every day if that's what you want to do. Whatever, I don't know.
But they have to commute to me. That's the thing. I have to be able to walk to work.
Your house.
They either got to move.
Definitely. To walk. That's how it always goes for the boss.
I can't wait.
I worked at a company once where the CEO got changed, and they moved like the whole corporate headquarters to a whole different like state because that's where the new CEO was. So like
crazy.
This is thousands of people or hundreds of people, and like all kinds of stuff was because the new CEO. So like you could have one employee who has to accommodate your location. I think that's fine.
Yeah. Right. Accommodate the location. Come to the All right.
All right, man.
All right.
I actually
Ian,
have a call too, so we're gonna wrap.
good stuff.
We could do 2 more hours on this, but I think we give the people their money's worth today.
They got their money's worth. I think
They
they
didn't
did.
get Aaron, but they got
No.
3 hours of us going
Discount.
through it all.
I'm discount Aaron. Yeah. Budget.
You're not discount Aaron. You're not discount Aaron.
Appreciate hanging with you, Ian. Appreciate Ian Landsman in general. Just appreciate
thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Good stuff.
I love it. I've been waiting for this forever, man. You're coming in, giving me the stuff I need. I hate though. I don't want React. I don't want all that stuff.
No.
I want
Doing
Flux.
it, finally.
I want Livewire.
We're doing it.
So nice. So nice to work in.
Yep.
Very, very, very nice. So
lovely.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's wrap it. Everybody, thanks for listening. If you made it this far, everybody who made it to our longest episode ever.
They did.
And I think they did. I think there's going to be a lot of people who make it to the end. Shout us out on Blue Sky or the other one if you're out there. If you made it to this far, I want to hear from you. It'll be a fun little thing. But yeah, mostly technical.com if somehow you're brand new here and you made it through the 3 hours. And thanks a lot, Caleb. And we will, Aaron should be back next week all. We'll see you then. Thanks.
Seeing you.